Good evening, and welcome to the school committee meeting of Tuesday, January 10th, 2023. And Happy New Year to all. Hope everyone had a safe and happy holiday season. And we are pleased to be back in our new calendar year. As we call the meeting to order, I'll call the meeting to order again, just to let folks know we had an executive session beginning at 6:30 earlier. We just adjourned that and are now resuming with the rest of the meeting in public session. As we do, if we'd like to ask everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And as we also start each meeting with the reading of the mission statement, the vision of the Wakefield Public Schools is to graduate students who are confident, lifelong learners, who are respectful and caring members of their community. Our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and community by providing rich and challenging curriculum, high-quality instruction, and educational experiences that meet their individual needs and interests. Item number 6 on the agenda is a public comment period. Any members of the public, either with us in the studio or via Zoom, would like to make a comment to the committee on anything that's either on the agenda or not on the agenda, you're welcome to do so at this time.
Hi,
Hello.
Amy Wall. So kind of more of a question. I have some conflicting information.
Let's straighten that right out.
Let's straighten that right out, shall we? So one email I received said that for the logo update that the committee was going to be a part of it, and then another email I received said that we'd be invited for public participation. So I just want to know where I should
The email
speak.
that you got from me
Yes,
said what?
said that we would be part of the discussion.
You were spot on.
Good, okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
So we will come back up then at that point.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any members of the public either again, in the studio or on Zoom? Any Zoom members of the community would like to speak tonight?
Nobody on Zoom.
Nobody on Zoom. Okay, well, speaking of Zoom, Vice Chair Amy Lehman is joining us via Zoom. Amy's a little under the weather and has been. We wish her well in the opening of the new year, but glad you're able to join us on Zoom. So we do actually have all 7 members of the committee fully participating in tonight's meeting. Okay, moving along. Item 7, consent agenda. We have a motion. Who'd like to read? Oh, Amy, can you read the motions? You're with us.
I can. Thank you.
7A.
Move that the school committee approve the minutes of the December 13, 2022 school committee meeting and accept the minutes of the January 5, 2023 school committee policy and communications subcommittee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 8, Chair's comments and action items. We're going to move right into item 8B and welcome our friends, colleagues, and Town Hall, our representatives as we discuss the upcoming Wakefield Memorial High School construction project. So I'd like to welcome Joseph Bertrand, Chair of the Permanent Building Committee, Town Administrator Steve Mayo, Maureen Butt, Chair of the Town Council, and Jonathan Chimes, Vice Chair of the Town Council. We have asked that this be an agenda item for tonight's meeting, as we are at a point where we've been working collectively, the school and the town, been working incredibly collaboratively for many years now to get us to this pretty exciting point. Town meeting is a couple of weeks away, at which we will be collectively asking the townspeople to move us forward with the high school project. And we just wanted to be able to have a concerted and open conversation about what actually some of the issues and ramifications may be moving into town meeting, some of the exciting news and information about that was received at the granted. It did make a little bit of a splash, meaning what the MSBA Board of Directors voted. It was December 21st, so it was sort of buried within holidays and holiday parties and vacations and that. So lots of good information to be shared around. So I welcome and thank our guests from Town Hall and our friends and collaborators in making this happen. So please, Mr. Mayo, Mr. Bertrand, and please take it away.
So we're thrilled to be here, and I will tell you that when the town council had our annual retreat this summer, I think our number one priority was the new high school. So that shows you the commitment of the municipal side of the town and the school side, and I think that Wakefield is unique in our surrounding communities in that we do work really well together. Every now and then, we're like the Oakland A's, right? In the dugout, we fight in the dugout, and then we go on the field and we win, but that's very
right.
rarely that happens. And I say that tongue-in-cheek, because Jim and Mark and I have been around a long time, so you know that happens. But this is a very exciting project. You will note that I think it's a fabulous design. As one who attended Wakefield High School in the great class of '80, who had 3 sisters go here, and their classes weren't as great as mine, but they were pretty good. My wife was in the class of '80, and my 3 boys all graduated from Wakefield High, so sisters and everything. So I'm thrilled that we graduated from here, and I've said it's time. We have no angst of having a new school. So I think the design has been great. I think Joe and the design team has done a fabulous job and is putting a fabulous projection in front of the community. We did get some good news from the SBA. We all know that in our own lives, in our own budgets, in our own houses, anybody who's done any work on your house, you've seen, 2x4s skyrocket in price and what have you. And schools are no different. Okay, so the price did go up, and the SBA did recognize that and gave us a little bit more in the per square footage, which I think ends up being about $5 million less that we need to bond on our own. We have come up with a pretty good financial plan that I'll talk about a little bit later. But let me turn it over to Joe and see if he wants to add anything on the project and open it up.
Well, as Steve mentioned, this has been a long project. As a matter of fact, looking back on it, we've actually had 31 meetings of the Permanent Building Committee and the School Building Committee on this project. And that does not include the community forums, which have been 10 of them, and also the focus groups. There was even probably even double that amount of focus group meetings. It's been a long process. The Permanent Building Committee had about 12 different options to where to place the new school, and eventually chose the Beasley Track and Field, or known as the Beasley Oval. We also eventually, in accordance with the MSBA, and that's very important, as we had to follow their procedures all along to make sure we receive their funding. And according to that, there were 3 options that we had to study. That was essentially a code upgrade, a renovation, and a new school. The code upgrade was very simple, essentially that it just doesn't meet the educational needs of the school. The renovation had similar issues, plus also there would have to be transition space that have to be obtained, which is not MSBA does not grant money for that. So eventually it came down to the option being the new school, and there were numerous design options as well that were chosen, that were looked at, and eventually we chose the preferred option that went before the MSBA in December, and along with a total project budget, which was approved by them at that time. Unfortunately, as Steve indicated, things went from April. The total project was $220 million, and by the time September came around, it had gone up to $273 million, unfortunately. What happened is that the initial people that made the estimates used a somewhat normal escalation cost. But when we looked at the real escalation cost, it actually was not like 4 or 5%, but almost 15%. And thus the reason for that increase. There was nothing added by the committee or by the architects or by the school district. It was just pure mathematics that it went up that amount. We had 3 different estimators on this that looked independently at it and came up with that $273 million. two companies that do probably more schools than anyone else here in the state, looked at it, and we had our construction manager, the CM at risk they're called, Bond Brothers. They're the same company that did the Galvin. They had their own estimate as well, real honest-to-God construction numbers. And that's where we came up with it, with that figure of the $273 million. And from that, the MSBA would grant at least $64,984,456. That's the kind of numbers that they come up with now. And the town then has, the grant that the MSBA gives us, that the town now is required to come up and pay $208,266,447 in accordance with the budget. But in that, and people have to understand that there is a large contingency. Not only just construction contingency, there's of over $5 million, there's owner's contingency of about $13 million, and about $12 million and more of inflation, like contingency that was put in as well, just in case the escalation costs are in there. So that all of those numbers are there, and thus the reason it comes to that amount. And I'll be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Stephen?
Just a couple of questions, Joe, to your most recent point about the, about sort of the escalation costs being, they made a conservative estimate thinking the prices might go high. If they came in under, just for a clarification point, if they were under budget, that isn't profit to them, that comes back to the town?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, this is like, the number that you're looking at is like the highest number that we can come up and deal with because we gave ourselves a very large contingency to deal with. And obviously, if the money isn't spent, it's not going to have to be charged to the taxpayers, obviously.
Great.
And that's probably a good segue into the borrowing aspect
Right.
of how we do this. So think of a construction loan, you're building a house. You're building your house, you are not going to, and your house is gonna cost $500,000 to build. You're probably not gonna borrow and pay interest on that $500,000 on day one, because it's gonna take you a year to build a house, okay? So on a construction loan, if you've had one from the bank only charges you on what you actually draw down. So municipal finance is a little different, so we will kind of stagger and structure how we borrow the money in different, stagger when we borrow it, so we're not paying interest on, $150 million that we're not gonna use for a year. I mean, that'd be crazy. I mean, you cannot borrow money under municipal bonds and then put it in the bank and make interest and charge it back. It's called arbitrage, they don't let you do that. There's penalties, not that we'd want to, but you can't do that anyway. So we have kind of come up with a staggered approach based on the cash flow needed to build the building, and that's been handled by our architects and reviewed by our owner's project manager. They've had a lot of experience with that, and you'll see, very little cash will be used initially, and then all of a sudden, as you get into it, using a lot more. We're gonna stagger our borrowings in that way, and, that way, the taxpayer ends up paying less, money that's sitting around, and it kind of phases in the increase on the tax levy. So you'll see a very little effect on the average taxpayer for the first 3 or 4 years of the project. And then when the whole thing ratchets up, that's when you'll see it. That's when you see the full effect that we have. We do have a updated schedule on that. I'll tell you, having done this before for the Galvin School, on the Galvin School, we estimated probably around the same percentage, 5.5% borrowing. That's not bad if you're getting a mortgage today. I personally feel that rates will be lower when we actually go and lock in these rates. I think there's a lot of economists that feel that same way. But if I really knew what was going on, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about this. I'd have a palm tree behind me and on my computer, right? So we really think that's gonna happen. So we'll go through a structure of breaking up the borrowing to match the cash flow and to get the best rates we can and the best deal for the taxpayer. So we'll be presenting that and submitting that, I think, Actually, I think that your committee has it. I sent it to Doug today on that, so you can see that the numbers are a little bit better than they were before. Certainly, you know, driving that in. And I think that for an average home in the first couple of years in Wakefield, the tax effect is gonna be very minimal. That's the wrong thing. I have too many things here. And we're presenting this more at town meeting and finance, we can discuss it as well. So in 2024, if your house is $700,000, fiscal year 2024, which starts next year, the extra assessment to you is probably gonna be about $22 for the year, because we're not borrowing that much. 2025, $75 for a $700,000 home. 2026, it starts ratcheting up to $415. 2027, $730, and then 2028, you get to that $1,258 level, which is a little bit less than had been out there before, because A, we're getting a little bit more from the SBA, and by staggering it and then looking at some better numbers, we figured out what it was. So I think that's where we are. I think it's a great project, like I said. And when Joe talked about the contingencies and our history, the Galvin, which was built under Joe's leadership as well in the Permanent Building Committee, came in on time and under budget. So, but it was under budget still, under budget is not. But, and
Close
so,
counts.
if we don't need the contingencies, which I hope that we don't, that last final borrowing will be less, so the result to the taxpayer will be less, which is what we want. You certainly don't want to compromise anything that's been approved in the school, and we won't, but that could make it even a little bit better. I'm also trying to figure out what happens with growth in the community. So as we get new growth in the community, that spreads that mortgage payment out over, you know, bigger population, more units, so it kind of comes down a little bit. I don't think that's a huge amount, but hey, every little bit helps. So I think that, you know, the average, you know, the average tax bill won't be as high as we thought, be a little bit less and maybe even a little bit better if we get a lower rate as well. So I think 5.5 is pretty conservative right now. And I don't know if Chair Butt wants to say anything, or Vice Chair Jonathan Jones.
Could I just ask my second question to Joe? Which was just that, I know that we've seen the adjustment for the completely new school, the price increase and what that would cost the town. Have we done the math on what the comparable increase would have been on the renovation or the hybrid sort of reno redo?
Yes,
We
and it
do
was
have-
about 2 million less.
Okay,
It was very little, as I recall, 2 or 3 million. It wasn't a great difference whatsoever.
right, no, and I didn't think
Because it
there
was
were-
based on it, because our initial numbers were based on the increase is purely based on the escalation of construction costs.
Right.
That escalation would have counted to the renovation as well as to the new construction, so that any difference there was very minimal in relation to the number.
And I completely agree, and I could see where that would be the case. I don't think I've necessarily seen that out in a slide deck, in a presentation, or I was just curious if somebody had done the math where I could access it and see it, because I feel like it would come up. If you looked at it now and you looked at the old number of a renovation and then compared it to the increase of the new school, right now, it would look like it was a bigger gap. I know that's not the case, because material
As I
increase
recall,
was
I think,
everywhere.
I think the April number was 220 million, and the renovation was like 218, as I recall.
You're spot on, Joe, and
Hey, I finally got one
you're
right.
spot on. And the escalation that was applied, so the new projections that we had for the new construction was applied to that, to the ad reno. And we added, I wanna say it's a 24% increase. So the 24% was applied, and there is a slide
Okay.
that compares the two numbers. And it looks just like they're on the side by side, just like Joe said, you know, when you're given a choice, like you're, you know, gonna kind of do an ad reno on your house or build new. If you can build new for essentially the same price that you could do an ad reno, you kind of usually err to the side of building new. And this is kind of essentially where we were. And when you put the escalation on both, you know, the 24% on both numbers, the gap, the ratio of difference is the same.
Yeah. Thank you, sorry, Mary.
No, that's okay. That was a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. So, and I just wanted to say thank you publicly. So, you know, Steve and Joe and Doug and others have been working on this for a long time. Steve talks about our retreat this year, where we all said it was a priority. I think that's been the last 5 or 6 retreats that it's kind of been a priority of all our council members. So much so that when the MSBA had their meeting on the 21st, the next day we had an a town council meeting to set the town meeting date. So just to be a little bit more precise than Chair Markham, town meeting is in 18 days, not a couple of weeks. So 18 days, March 28th. And despite
January 28th.
January. Whoa, January. I am still not in this new year. January 28th, Saturday, January 28th, 9 a.m. And
At
just
the field house, the high school field house.
Nice.
yes, and despite all the great work that Joe and Steve and Doug and everyone else on planning board and school committee and town council has done on this, it's not a done deal. So the way that things pass in Wakefield is we have to vote at town meeting, and hopefully if we get 2/3 of 2/3 of the vote there, it'll go to the ballot. And so this is just, you know, everyone gets a part of this. We will have presentations that will also be up on our website, so people can ask questions and learn all that they can. And I think just the one thing that I want to that I'm really proud of as we're doing this process is that we are unique in Wakefield and we have a senior tax credit. And so if you think that you know someone or you yourself could benefit from that, reach out to Town Hall, because we actually are very aware of the price tag of this. And lastly, I just want to say, Chair Markham, I love the mission that you read at the start, the mission statement, and you talk about our goal is to create lifelong learners. And the building we currently have is not producing that. So as a biology major in college, to have chemistry labs that people can't use, students can't produce, we are not producing lifelong learners. And so this is our opportunity to create future generations of leaders. Yeah, and Vice Chair Chines.
Sure. So thank you, and I echo everything that that Councillor Butt said. You know, this is a project that has the enthusiastic support, you know, of myself and I think all of our colleagues on the town council. You know, I think the deficiencies with the current high school are clear. You know, Maureen talked about the science labs. You know, I think about the fact that the building's not accessible. I think about the fact that it doesn't have adequate space for special education. It doesn't have flexible space for individualized instruction. And the school committee and the administration does a great job of trying to center equity in all of our educational work here in Wakefield. And these are examples of how we have a building that doesn't support that mission. And so as Steve said, I think it is time. I've had the benefit and really the fortune of being part of the school building committee meetings over the last, oh my gosh, almost 2 years now. And can really speak to the process that's been followed has been incredibly thorough, incredibly professional. And so even though we're putting a project in front of the town that does, you know, have a very large price tag, I think when we look at the options that we evaluated, I actually do think that this is the best option for the town. And I think that over the long term, I actually think it's the most cost-effective option for the town. You know, we know the alternative of doing nothing is not going to be feasible if we want to be able to provide the education to our students that, you know, we really have an obligation to provide. And I think that this project gives us an exciting opportunity to meet the promise that we talk about, you know, at the beginning of these meetings, and meet the promise that I know we all want to make to our students. So thank you for considering this, for Superintendent Lyons, your leadership, and for everyone on the school committee for your support of this project.
Well, I think thank you all four of you very much for coming and sharing. And other questions? No, Mike, go right ahead.
So, yeah, thanks again, Joe. If you haven't had the chance, seeing Joe and Chip in action in these meetings is worth the price of admission. And they've been doing it for a long time together. But thank you.
You don't get the phone calls afterwards.
I don't get them.
But thank you for that. I just had a question that I never asked, and I know we had some issues with Galvin, where we had some flooring that had to be repaired after the school opened. I just wanted to kind of understand, what are sort of the assurances we have, warranties, that type of stuff, that protect us with this new high school.
Well, just like the Galvin, it was purely warranted. We never paid a dime for
Didn't pay a
that.
nickel for it, yeah.
So it was all under the warranty. The same warranty will be there for the high school as well. We made it very clear in the Galvin that when the contracts were signed, that a lot of times some of these contractors will say our warranty is for X number of years, and they try to start it from when they installed the object or when they, got it running. When we did the Galvin, we made sure that the warranty began at the end of the project, not when they installed it. So in other words, if it's a boiler, if it's a air conditioning unit, the warranty began at the time that the project ended, when the building was complete, not when they put the air conditioner up on the roof or whatever. So that kind of, with that a guarantee, and I'm sure we'll have the same in this project as well.
Same vendor, so probably,
Yes.
given that. What's the time frame of that warranty, Joe?
Oh, it all depends. There's different ones,
Okay.
some are a year, some are 5 years.
Okay. It
I can't,
varies, Depending
yeah.
on the
Yeah.
item.
Depends on the
And I will say
product.
that the contractor Bond Construction stood there shoulder to shoulder with us every step of the way. And
They were outstanding. And I'll tell you, that's one of the reasons the committee, when we went to choose, we had a lot of different contractors that applied for the job. And because of the way they stood by their warranty and stood by their work, we chose Bond Construction as the CM at risk, construction manager at risk for the high school.
Great, thank you.
Kevin?
Just want to kind of echo, I got to be a part of, or a silent part of the permanent building committee. It's the first time I had ever seen you all in action, and just the amount of work that, you have done over the course of the time is immense, and we're extremely grateful and just really excited about the project as it's come about. If there's anything that I think I hear over and over from people, I think it's, neighbors who are looking over at Stoneham and seeing some of the things going there, how they've had to kind of massage that project, seek additional funding. You talked a little bit about contingencies, some other things, but because I know that that's a concern that I kind of hear over and over, can you talk about how that would be potentially different here with our project, so that we wouldn't find ourselves in a similar situation?
Well, Stoneham bid prior to the great escalation of cost. So their initial bids and their initial estimates were based on pre-pandemic type of economy. Ours are post-pandemic, so to speak, or whatever that means. But the bottom line is that, we are taking account that escalation. For this year was 15%, I think for next year was 8 to 9%. So that is a huge amount. Now, and hopefully, the escalation is not gonna be that way. But we made sure that it is, and we made sure, because we don't want to have to come back to ask for more money. You can't, once you get to the MSBA and get that project voted on like we did on December 21st, you can't go back and ask for more. So that's why we did what we did, and included about $30 million in contingency money. The actual construction cost is with those contingencies is $220 million. There's $50 million in soft cost, but that contingency is in that 220.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Dr. Lyons.
I just like to, before we,
You're gonna start giving us questions now. He's gonna give us a hard
no,
time.
it's not a question. It's a comment. It's just to say, it's important for me personally to say thank you, and professionally to say thank you. I don't know if we would be as prepared as we are if we weren't able to work as closely as we have as a group and as a team. I know it hasn't been easy. We haven't always agreed. But I do believe, like Steve said, I do think we have a product that meets the kind of the educational program and the needs of the students and the needs of the community. And I don't think we would be here if it weren't for the efforts of everybody involved. And for Steve, the financial aspect of this, I want to thank you for the kind of the late changes that you were able to make to, I think, save, I think, quite a bit of money in the long run. And to
We've got a
support the
good team,
community.
so.
Yeah, we do. So thank you so much.
Thank you. A couple of things that I could point out,
Please.
Mr. Chairman. Are my fellow town councils, I'm going back in time. The chair and the vice chair are very modest. They've had a lot of, input on the town council on this, and the town council unanimously voted to sponsor the article. I think that's important to point out, it was a unanimous vote. The other item that we talked about a little bit tonight was a senior tax credit, and I'm very proud of the community for voting on that. I don't think we had a question or an objection the 2 times we've done it. And in this last round that we just did in November, the town council sponsored the article to increase that senior tax credit by up to 50%, depending on what the state does with some of their other numbers here. So I think that, that could go a long way for some of the seniors that, are gonna feel a little bit on this and may even cover the entire increase in many instances, I think. So, I would encourage any, that is actually in front of the state legislature. It's been filed since the November town meeting. It's got to go through their circuit there. I don't anticipate any issues. It's kind of just redoing what we already did. But any senior that qualifies those items at the state level will qualify for this. And our very excellent assessing department and our excellent assessor Victor Santinello, he goes on the circuit, he goes to the senior center. During COVID, we met on the common, set up lounge chairs to talk to people. So any senior that is having an issue with this should come see it. You can always use me as a conduit, and we can figure that out. That's quite a testament by the town and by the town council to sponsor unanimously both of those articles.
I think that's another example of what the superintendent was saying a moment ago, the type of work that really makes this town as unique and as special as it truly is. Through all of our good days and bad days and difficult days, and at the end of the day, we are all Wakefield, and we're all working toward the best interest of families and children and seniors. And I think the type of this project is truly representative of that. It has been since its origin, even the beginning of going back a couple of SOIs. It took us a couple of statements of interest to get that ball fully on the field. But at the end of the day, we didn't stop at those submissions. We wanted the state to continue to know that Wakefield, both the school side and the town side, was squarely in support of submitting those statements of interest year after year. So, patience and perseverance gets the Warriors through the day. So, it's not insignificant to make that note. I certainly want to just say that, the type of work that has been done on schools, certainly having the four of you here, please pass this certainly along. But the type of work that's been done, not just, we've talked about the Galvin tonight, but certainly in the interim, there have been projects at Walton, projects here within the interior of buildings that have been incredibly well-managed and well-financed, well-structured, well-managed between Town Hall and Permanent Building Committee. And I know we're forever grateful for that work and that partnership. As you said, Steve, at the opening, there aren't a lot of communities in the state, never mind some of our neighbors, that have the type of relationship and partnering that we do. And that's truly what, in many ways, what is going to make this successful. And I think truly, also, I think that the townspeople that are inclined to be supportive of moving a new high school forward also have to fall back on the good news that projects in Wakefield have a solid history of being well-managed, well planned. We don't just throw something against the wall and see what sticks. Going back 30-plus years with how the financing plans and mechanisms have been in place to put something on, and what, as projects begin to come off, others go on. This is not new news, right? Wakefield has been working well in this mechanism, financing mechanism, for for a long time now. And I think it bodes well. So the type of work that we're all excited about, and hopefully the townspeople will be as well, going into town meeting on January 28th, 9 a.m. at the Field House, will be terrific. Kevin?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So there's a lot of seniors around where I live, and when I try to sell the new high school, I often get some very nice arguments with my neighbors. But I know about the senior tax credit, and I heard you talk about it before, but I just don't, I don't have the education to be able to say, well, what's your income? You're eligible. I was wondering if you had like a pamphlet or something that's kind of like short and easily
Yeah, I
digestible.
think we do,
that-
and I will check with our assessor. I think he does have the parameters and what have you. So-
Yeah, because it'd be great if, it'd be great to even get hands on some and to be able to just like, while we're going around and try to get support for the project, to be able to have that out, be something to, add some
I
comfort.
think we've also encouraged seniors to reach out.
Yeah.
Victor is an exceptional teacher, actually, in explaining and breaking this down so that people understand it. And so he really does a great job. Is that, I don't know if that's fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very much
And I
so.
would say the senior center can also be a resource with that as well. So there are definitely, there's the question about the materials, but, there are also places where people can call to get these answers. And, they can talk to experts who can say, well, tell me about your income, what you qualify for, and we can help you figure out, whether this is something that works for you.
Terrific. Well, thank you again.
Oh, I thought you.
I was. I'm gonna just add this one
Okay,
thing as
please do.
everyone. Well, and I think it was the December 21st was the first MSBA call that I listened to. I know others have been on a lot more. And one thing that we just didn't highlight, and I just wanted to take a moment to show appreciation when you talk about team, was Senator Lewis and Rep. Kate Lippert-Garabedian really pushed MSBA to redo the formula a little bit, and it gave us some more money. Not a ton, but it was a lot, and that's part of Team Wakefield. They really advocated behind the scenes, and at that meeting,
Yep.
the MSBA board voted on changing the formula, which will help us. And I think there were 2 schools approved that day, so 2 schools get that new formula. So I just, again, team effort all along, and for years, people have been working on this, so thank you all.
Indeed, yeah, that's very true. And that was acknowledged by Executive Director McCarthy, the work that Senator Lewis and Rep. Lippert-Garabedian put in at that meeting. Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Okay, well, without any further ado, we thank you again very much and wish we'll see everyone at town meeting, if not before.
We'll see if you
Recording
can
in
get your
progress.
group out of here as quickly as Maureen did.
There you go.
I think that ship sailed already.
Okay, so next,
you all.
next 8C, while we're still on this topic, it is appropriate, I believe, if not entirely within order, to have the Wakefield School Committee formally endorse the project moving into town meeting. And we have a motion. Ms. Lehman?
Move that the school committee strongly endorse the recommendations of the Wakefield Memorial High School Building Committee and the Town Permanent Building Committee for the construction of a new high school and campus according to the plans, designs, and financing terms submitted to and approved by the Massachusetts School Building Authority, and further strongly endorse said plans, designs, and financing terms as they are to be presented to a special town meeting on Saturday, January 28, 2023, and in the future best interests of teaching and learning for the students of Wakefield, to respectfully encourage and request the support for a new high school and campus from the citizens of Wakefield through an affirmative vote at town meeting.
Motion made, is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Excellent, well, thank you very much. It's been a long time coming, and we're very enthusiastic about the rest of the month. Thank you, our partners at Town Hall. Thank you so much. Okay, I'd like to I'll go back a step if I may, and call up our student advisory, our representative, and talk about the great things that are happening today at Wakefield Memorial High School. We just talked about future things, but we want to hear about how things are going today in this semester. So, welcome.
Hello. I don't have too many things tonight, but in academics, there's an early release tomorrow and no school on Monday in honor of MLK Day. And term 2 ends next Friday, January 20th, and mid-years are the following week. And on Thursday, January 19th, from 6 to 8, there will be an open house for current 8th graders. And that is all I have.
That's right.
Is there an a cappella concert?
Yes, acapella night is the 21st.
Okay. At the Galvin?
Yes, at the Galvin.
Great. Any questions? Terrific. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for waiting, and appreciate your work. And good luck on midterms.
Thank you.
Okay, going back to the agenda, item 8D. One of the things that the committee has discussed a couple times in the fall, and certainly has been discussed in the past, at the very beginning of this conversation around a new high school, in the early conversations at permanent building committee meetings and Wakefield Memorial High School building committee meetings, was the type of things that are going to be replicated on the new campus. What are the types of services and facilities, athletic facilities in particular, that we presently have that are going to be brought forward onto the new campus with obviously state-of-the-art type improvements made. And one of the things that has been, I think, clear to us from the very beginning, and I think we had a concrete conversation in the fall with community members as well as members of the Beasley family, was the importance of making sure that the community and the Beasley family knows how much the school department and the town values the memory of Sean Beasley and the fact that the track and field has been memorialized and named after him for many, many years now. And it has been the town's belief all along that's not going to change. I know that we probably should have been a little more concrete at the time when we had Deb Beasley with us. Sean's sister was with us via Zoom back, I forget the date, but back in the fall at some point, when we shared these conversations, and again, shared very publicly our intention to make sure that this was well known. But I think it's important for us, again, as we're going into town meeting and going into seeking times to make sure that the community understands the value and the importance of memories and the importance of history and the importance of the type of institutional work and awareness that the community needs to continue to hold. So with that in mind, we have on tonight's agenda a commitment in terms of a vote to make a commitment to rename the new location and the new track and field itself to carry forward the name of Sean F. Beasley Memorial Track and Field. And I would like, if we can, to have that motion read, and then we can discuss it. Amy?
Yes. I move that the school committee, in recognition of the life and memory of the late Sean F. Beasley, outstanding student athlete of the class of 1972, and in support of the town's dedication of the existing track and field on May 15, 1977, vote to carry forward the name Sean F. Beasley Memorial Track and Field to the new and relocated track and field on the campus of the new Wakefield Memorial High School.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Great. Seeing, yes, Mr. Ingles?
Yeah, I'm not sure like the right place to have this discussion, but I just think this topic, and it comes up in other spaces where we look at sort of memorial spaces that we have, not just in school, but around town. And I think of how we often put a name on a thing to remember somebody in a moment, but how quickly that gets lost within a generation or two. And so while I don't have a solution, I just think it's worth having a conversation in some space, and maybe it's in a policy subcommittee, or maybe it's in a facilities meeting somewhere to talk about sort of how do we do a better job of sort of remembering sort of the people that we find a place to dedicate for. You know, I think of, you know, what's it gonna take, 10 years, 12 years before somebody sort of needs to know more about Megan Burnett. You know, it's gonna come up again. So I just think we should make room for that space that talks somewhere else in our time.
And I think that is an excellent point, and I think that is one of the points that Ms. Bisley made when she was speaking with us back in the fall, although I don't think through anything that anyone certainly intentionally did, but there is not a place in time in anything, as you say, that is memorialized around town. We want to make sure that we keep that memory alive and well, and make sure that the families and the individuals that are memorialized, the entire high school, for example, is a memorial building to the veterans of the First and Second World War. So this is not new information, but I think you're an excellent point. How do we keep that spirit alive and have townspeople continually made aware of the history? So I think that's certainly something that we should take on and make sure that becomes part of the new building somehow. Whether it's a longer or better explanation or a tour guide booklet, or I don't know, but I think it's an important and very valuable thing to make sure that that these names just don't get lost on a page somewhere.
Yeah, and I think, we as a town, and I didn't grow up in Wakefield, but I've lived here an awful long time. You remember Walton Field, after Mary Walton. And I thought they did a nice job of making sure that they continued to honor her when the new Galvin was built. They also honored Paula Mullen.
Right.
But as a town, I think we do a very good job of it, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't continually keep on top of that as well, so we don't lose that positive trait of the town of Wakefield.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. Good. Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Very good, thank you. Next on the agenda, 8E, we have a request, our annual request from the Wakefield Independence Day Committee to allow use of the Galvin Middle School parking lot for the 2023 annual 4th of July Carnival fundraiser. The letter was included in your packet. Hopefully you get a chance to read that, but we have a motion. Ms. Lehman.
Move that the school committee approve the request of the Wakefield Independence Day Committee for the use of the Galvin Middle School parking lot during April School Vacation Week 2023 for the purpose of hosting its annual fundraising carnival.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Dr. Piscatlo.
Just real quick, this weekend, Mr. Ingalls and I and Mr. Benjamin were talking to a new resident, and we were talking about the 4th of July and how great it is here and all the things that are going on. And I think they made some good points that I know that the 4th of July committee is really desperate for some new volunteers and some additional support. And so if anybody's watching and anyone's equally engaged with the incredible events of July 4th, if you have any time, certainly reach out to Brian Fox, the chair. It's just such a wonderful, amazing, unique aspect of our town, and it's on the backs of volunteers. And like everything else, tends to be the same people, and I know they're kind of nearing the end of their lifespan in terms of their ability to take on this huge task. So if anyone is looking for a way to engage or join a great committee, I heard it's one, and so I know that they're very much looking for people. So excited to support this, of course, but just want to throw that plug out there.
Great, very true. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. Next item, 8F. Wanted just to put out a reminder, we last talked about school committee, subcommittee goals back in, I think, November timeframe. and we talked about making sure that we had a discussion come January. So this will be on the second January meeting, January 24. So we'll set some time aside for the subcommittee chairs to share out the subcommittee goals that have been worked on in the last couple of months. We're kind of at the mid-year point, so some of it we appreciate will be retrospective a bit, and obviously also moving forward for the second half of the year. So just a reminder that will be an agenda item at the next meeting. Okay. I now pass moving on to item 9, superintendent reports. Thank you.
very much. I would like to, with your permission, Mr. Markham, take the items out of order. And I would like to move to 9G, which is the WMHS Program of Studies. On the call, we have Amy McLeod. She's joining us via Zoom. Amy, is David able to join us via Zoom?
I believe he's here as well.
Okay.
I am here. Hi, everybody.
We're somewhere in there, in the ether.
There I am.
Oh, there you go. And so,
All right. Oh.
I turn it over to you just to discuss the new program of studies for this year. It's been, a copy has been provided to school committee, along with the kind of the sheet itemizing, and we have that displayed up on the screen here, which itemizes kind of the changes that are made by content area. Up first in the first row is English.
Great. So just quickly before we go through, first of all, good evening, everybody. Nice to see everybody. Before we go through the changes, which are pretty minimal for this year, I just wanted to quickly remind everybody about the process that we go through for the program of studies. So the changes that you're seeing tonight, or that were given to you earlier, go through a process that starts in November. So we're basically starting a school year, and then in November, we're already looking forward to the next year and thinking about putting together a course booklet so that we can get through course selection in time for the following school year. So we spend time in departments. Department leaders, our department coordinators, and our 5 through 12 coordinators work with teachers to spend some time looking at the courses that we currently offer, consider any changes that may be needed, consider maybe courses that we no longer are going to run, and also think about what are the new needs that are arising in the department. Those changes come up through the department leaders. They meet with Dave and I in December, and we put together the changes that you're going to see before you tonight. So I'm going to ask Dave to talk us through these changes, and a few I'll jump in on that are some of the bigger programs, but we can get through and take questions at the end.
All right, thanks, Amy. Good evening, everybody. And as Amy mentioned, we have a lot of new courses. Actually, it's a lot of new electives that we're really excited to share tonight with you. And there's a few other programmatic changes that we're making. But as Doug said, just to start from the top here with English, we have one new course. And as we mentioned last year, we added half-year electives for seniors. Instead of taking just English 12, they had the option of taking 2 half-year courses to meet that senior English requirement. And so that went really well this year. And they're adding the English department's going to add one more course for next year. It's called Sports Reading and Writing. And just to pull a couple of things out of the course description, basically it's a half-year course. The students have the opportunity to read and write about sports. They'll include classic and contemporary sports journalism and sports columns, as well as some short sports-related fiction. In terms of writing, students will learn the basics of sports journalism and have the opportunity to write about sports at Wakefield High School, even beyond. So we're hoping I think we're going to get a lot of attention on that one, and we're hoping to see that, have some success next year. So that just will be another additional elective that we could have seniors take to meet their senior requirement. The next one has world language, and it says no changes made, but just want to point out that we have added the dual enrollment Spanish and Latin over the last year or two, and that's been going really, really well. We're really happy with those additions over the last year. Okay, so moving on to math and business. So for math, the first two are somewhat related. Dropping discrete math and then also dropping geometry level 2. So briefly on the geometry level 2, that has not run for the last 2 years, but we've kind of just kept it into the program. Because of that, it's just kind of time to remove it, but we just want to point out that we're planning on doing that. And if you're not aware, geometry has an honors level, a college placement level, and then there's a geometry level 2. And what we were finding was that that level course, when it did run a few years ago, as you know, the math department chair had mentioned that the proportion of students in that class, there was a large proportion of students with disabilities, and the thought was that they're better served, all students are better served if they're in the college placement course, just with the right supports put into those classrooms. So we're still just going to have the honors and the college placement geometry. So wanted to point that one out. The discrete math, that is typically a class for seniors to meet that 4th year math requirement, who aren't quite ready or able to take the pre-calc level. And that has been running. It was a new course 2 years ago, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago. It hasn't been overly popular, so the math department, they decided to go back and try to create another attempt at an elective, or not elective, but a requirement that seniors can take. And they feel like this class called Mathematical Modeling is going to be a success. Basically, the brief description is that it'll just reinforce the concepts that they've learned in the lower level, the entry level math courses over the freshman, sophomore, and junior year. And it links algebra, geometry, trig, and stats to everyday life, work, and decision making. So it's trying to make it a little more applicable to the real world, and have that be an option for students who are not looking to take pre-calc as their senior math course. The next one on there, I think, Amy, you want to mention about the integrated math and physics. You want to speak to that one?
Yeah, sure. Doug and I were talking about this one a little bit earlier today. So we're really excited about this new integrated math and physics class that we're going to work on. That is going to be a course that students are going to take for 2 years. And it is going to be a double block of a math and a science course. What we're finding, or what we've been finding for a few years, is that we are able to identify a small group of students who come from 8th grade with early warning indicators of that they're going to need more support in math and science. We can look at 8th grade course grades, we can look at 8th grade MCAS scores, but we really have some good information that helps us, and patterns and trends have shown us that these students taking biology in 9th grade and trying to take the bio MCAS has not been successful. And those are the students that are immediately in 10th grade trying to take retests and struggling with that MCAS. So one of the ideas that the math and science department leaders had was to try to create an integrated course that would be a course that 2 teachers, a math teacher and a science teacher, would collaborate and work on, so that there'd be connections between those, sort of a STEM approach, and that it would be, in math, they would really cover both algebra and geometry standards, but it would give them time over 2 years to also reinforce some of the more lower level skills that may be missing, gaps in their learning. And then it would also give students time to do some of the review of science standards in 8th grade, and then move on to physics standards, so that they could have 2 years and take the physics MCAS in 10th grade, rather than trying to take a science MCAS in 9th grade. So I think we're really excited about writing this curriculum, giving teachers the opportunity to sort of create a new course that would better support the needs of these students. We think we can keep this as a small class, so anywhere from 15 to 18 students, and keep them together for 2 years. So there'd be sort of an A year of it and a B year of it, so that they would have a different it'd be a 2-year curriculum, and then we would kind of repeat as we cycle kids through that. So we're really excited about that piece. So you'll see that both being offered in. It will be offered as separate classes, obviously, because they'll get credits for math and science, but it's listed under both here in the handbook. So we move on to business then?
Yeah. So business, we're excited to have 2 new electives for next year. They're half-year electives. And as you can see on the list there, one of is sports marketing and the other is entrepreneurship. So we're thinking, again, that should get some attention. I think we're going to have some interested students. Sports marketing, it's a class that basically will step in the role of a marketing manager of a fictional shoe manufacturing company. So it's a simulation program. So they're going to be able to jump right in, and they're going to deal with a struggling product, how to handle that, how to pick athletes for endorsements, analyze market research, designing new products. So from what we've heard, it's supposed to be a really amazing program, and so we're looking forward to offering that next year. And then entrepreneurship, students basically will learn how to get startups up and running, identifying problems, gathering data, and just trying to find business solutions. So we think that is something. These electives are really coming from the students, conversations we're hearing from students, things that the department has seen that they could develop and improve. So I think we're listening to the students, and we're also, the department leaders are well on top of what would be helpful to improve on our offerings. So those are 2 electives in business. Performing arts, there are no changes proposed for next year. Everything is moving right along there. The science department, as Amy just spoke about, the integrated math and physics is on there again, obviously, because it's a science course. The other piece is that the renaming of Principles Engineering to Principles Engineering 1, and then adding the Principles of Engineering 2. And the thought process behind that is currently the Principles of Engineering is offered to juniors and seniors with a need of having a background of physics. And I think they're trying to extend the pathway out to more grade levels, right? So instead of it having just one course for juniors and seniors, they're going to have a Principles Engineering 1 open to sophomores, which will teach fundamentals and enough information that the students don't have to have physics as a prerequisite. All right, so that way they can jump in earlier, but not have to worry about not having physics all taken care of already. Engineering 2 will then be a class that will be based upon having some type of either physics completed or at least taking it concurrently. So that's the reasoning between the change of the first title and adding that Principles of Engineering 2. All right. Moving on to social studies, there are a number of, basically just adding 4 new electives is what we're looking to do. Actually, 3 electives and 1 AP class, I should mention. The electives would be, there's one sport, activism, and society, and there's another one titled Native American History. So again, those 2 came from listening to students, and then also the department leaders and teachers kind of getting together and figuring out what would be helpful and what might be important for students to be able to choose as electives. They had some electives this year that went really well. So as of the last few years, we've really increased the number of electives, and they're showing success, which is encouraging because that kind of gets us to want to really move forward with it and add as many as we can to let students take what they're really interested in. The other class, we're adding AP Modern World History. So or World History Modern, I guess they call it. So we have AP US History so far, and we've, over the years have had increasing number of students and families ask if we have that, and since we don't, why don't we? And I think it is a good point to add to the department, and they also feel the same as we did, and they're going to add that for next year. We're always increasing our AP offerings, and I think that history, just again with the requests and mentioning over the past few years, that they feel comfortable with moving forward with that class. So that would cover that one. The next one is developing academic skills. So this is just a 1 semester, couple of day per cycle classes, but the reasoning of this addition is basically based off the learning loss that we've all know, unfortunately, too well due to COVID. And we've noticed a lot of students, especially 8th graders transitioning into 9th, due to that learning loss, they just have a lot of executive functioning needs that aren't being met due to that time being out. So whether it's time management, organizational skills, learning skills, a lot of different things, that we're noticing preventing students from succeeding in all their courses. So to offer this, and it'll be for 8th graders going into 9th for now, to offer that to students a couple of days a cycle, so it's not going to have to take place of an elective or a whole course itself. So be able to fit into a schedule, but also add significant assistance in those areas. So.
Dave, if I could add to that, I think the other
Yeah.
piece that's important about that is that it's falling under social studies. So we're seeing sort of a humanities focus on supporting kids who may be struggling with some of these skills. We already have the math support in place that's been happening now for a few years for freshmen and sophomores who may be struggling with some of their mathematics skills. And then we're looking at this new course, which is an integrated kind of STEM course in math and science, to really think about 9th and 10th graders who may be coming in with identified gaps already based on their, early morning indicators. So we're really thinking that this course, although it's falling in social studies, really rounds out a humanities approach to kind of pinpointing areas of a student's profile that may need more support.
All right. Thank you. So the next department, moving right along here, we have the Film and Video Visual Arts, and a new course that department will be offering, Advanced Digital Art. So I think we've seen just an increase of interest and ability of our students in this whole area, and that department's going to be adding that digital art class. Basically, the prerequisite there will be graphic design. So for students who have completed that, to offer yet another more advanced course for students who have excelled in that and still have that interest in potentially pursuing that field later on. So as the description says, the students will grow from entry-level designers to creative directors, mirroring real-world career advancement. So it's for seniors, the full-year course, and again, it kind of helps extend that pathway throughout the years for a nice progression for the students who are interested in that field. The last one that is a change, the health, life skills, and culinary falls under that department, is a course called Foundations of Education, which I'm really, really excited to see how this one goes and get this up and running, because I feel like a education pathway has been something that has been talked about and discussed, but not really implemented and pursued any further than that. And I think that's about to change. And so we're excited to start this course. It's basically going to introduce students to the profession, the education profession, and then emphasize the fundamental teaching skills. And it's through a curriculum. It's called Educators Rising Curriculum, and we're working with the state to incorporate this into the course itself. And it's a standards-based curriculum. It has discussion, practical experience. And they're going to learn through 6 modules the ins and outs of the pathway and of the career. So ideally, what's going to happen is the students would take that, but then it also include and translate to an internship, which we do have some internships already with schools, but to kind of grow eventually into a more of an actual pathway where there are these types of courses, then it'll culminate in a internship at the end. So.
Dave, I would just add to that too, the piece
Yeah.
about the state is really, DESE is really looking at this pathway and these courses. The organization that Dave talked about is sponsored through DESE as a way to kind of combat teacher shortage too. So they're really talking about ways to find kids who are passionate about education, get them ready for what education would look like if they were to major in college, give them a little experience. We have kids now working at the Woodville, but maybe finding other places where they can go in and work with students to see if it's something that they're really interested in, and kind of funnel them in a pathway toward education. So it would be nice to add another course to the courses that we already have in education to kind of round out that work. So we're really excited about that. And I think that's it.
Covers them all.
So if there's any questions about those or any other questions about the program and studies, we can certainly answer them for you. I'm sorry it's a little bit dry talking through all those changes, but that's kind of, we just want to kind of lay them out for you and then answer any questions that you may have.
It's
Thanks.
better than MCAS competency determination I had last
I
month.
know,
So it's,
Give you all the hot topics.
we get all the hot topics at the high school. It's really fun.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, David. I think we have a question.
I did. I'm sorry. I have a couple. Can we just go back to start? Sort of. Can we talk about segmenting engineering principles of engineering into two separate sections, like the need for that?
Did you say the need for that or the reasoning for that?
Why is that happening? Yes.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of reasons it's happening. I think Dave talked about a lower entry criteria so that we can get more kids started in engineering sooner, who may not have higher levels of math and science but want to start earlier, so that we can get more kids enrolled in engineering. And then the second reasoning is to expand the offerings that we have so that kids can take more years of engineering before they leave the high school. So it's pretty much a rebranding of what we're doing. And then expanding that course so that there could be a second year of it. Part of the engineering courses are designed around Project Lead the Way and the Project Lead the Way curriculum, which we're using as a basis for our courses. But the department is kind of building off of those so that we're having more offerings for kids.
Okay, so what I'm seeing on paper so it isn't just you took the principles of engineering and just segmented it and you're just gonna teach that same amount of content and just stretch it out. You're actually adding new content in to make those two levels sort of more robust in their own way?
Yeah, right, so we're creating a first level and a second level, so we're adding more content, absolutely.
Okay. That's great. And you said that the developing academic skills was in social studies because it was going to be humanities focused. It seemed like in the topic, in the brief description of it, that it may be something that would sit in English, but is there a reason that it's residing in social studies?
The reason why it's residing in social studies is it came from social studies teachers. And so, again, we think it resides in the humanities, so I think it easily could be taught by a history teacher or an English teacher. I was talking to both the English department leader, and also social studies, and we were talking about not only could it focus on some of the skills that Dave talked about in terms of organization study skills, but we really could see this as being a place where kids could have some focused work on writing as well. So again, I think it's still in the developmental stages, but where it sits really comes from the department that really showed an interest in kind of spearheading this. But it'll be a collaborative effort in terms of kids getting enrolled in there who need help in humanities. Or so I would say in English or social studies, but right now it is residing in social studies.
Okay, great, thank you, Amy. And then just my last sort of, I guess, maybe just formatting, is the new course, Native American History. I think even through the course description itself, I think it may be more sort of appropriately branded as Indigenous History, especially as you go on to read sort of the blurb that is a synopsis of what will be taught. So as you sort of produce the course catalog, I would just perhaps suggest a name edit.
Great, we can certainly talk to the social studies group about that and make that change, thank you.
Sure. That's right.
Could I just quickly interrupt and ask our friends at WCAT to change the screen so we can see Amy and David? Because right now we're looking at the...
You haven't been able to see us this whole time?
No, we're looking at the memo.
Huge drop off.
Thank you.
You look
Thank
way
you,
better.
Thank you, friends. Okay, Kevin? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is your part of the meeting. My bad. Sorry, boss.
The integrated math and physics seems like a pretty neat idea. So this would be the first rollout of this. So my one question I had was, would students in this 2-year course, they'd be taking it both years, right, freshman and sophomore year?
Correct.
Would they be taking biology freshman year as well, or no?
No.
Okay.
So we're talking about after that 2-year sequence, what's the next step? Would those students be going into biology? Could they then be going into chemistry instead? Again, we're really pegging this towards students who traditionally have come in, have really struggled with passing biology, passing the bio MCAS. So just really having them tackle a physics test, which physics curriculum, physics test, which is an extension of what they're doing in 8th grade. But also there's a lot of conversation around that physics MCAS having 2 years to prepare for it. It makes better connections to mathematics. So the teachers who are talking about it just see better connections between those. And we feel like that authentic experience and that double exposure, right, or that connected exposure, hopefully will help kids with retention as they take that through 2 years and then take the MCAS. So the next step then, yeah, Kevin, would be maybe biology as juniors. That would be a possibility.
Okay, yeah, no, it seems like a great idea. Is, when you said the math and science teachers will be working together, is this going to be a pure co-taught class? Or would it be
It's not
more
gonna be
math class,
co-taught.
science class, and they're just gonna be communicating with each other about the curriculum?
Yeah, it's going to depend on what scheduling looks like for next year and what our numbers are. There have been conversations about it. It's not planned to be co-taught right now.
Right.
It could be. It could be scheduled back to back. We can try to do that. Our schedule doesn't really allow for pure back-to-back scheduling because our waterfall is a little crazy. But it could be back-to-back sometime. We did talk about what that would look like. We talked about maybe the teacher could have a duty or that could be their prep block, the other, so that if they needed to get together at some points, they could be there. We've talked about different iterations of what that could look like. So we're still figuring that out, but it's probably not going to be co-taught just based on the numbers and the differences in the content.
Yeah.
But it may be. We're not really 100% sure yet.
Got it.
Again, the planning has just started on this course and we want to get the teachers involved more in what that could look like.
Yeah.
But we'll
Well-
keep you updated as it unfolds, definitely.
Great. And yeah, I think it's a great move to bring in sports marketing and entrepreneurship. I think that's really great ideas for electives in business. I know in our school, we have a teacher that really spearheaded a really good sports marketing course. And like, they do presentations at Gillette Stadium, like, there's like all these programs around, so it's really, really, like, we always talk about real world courses, but if those two are, that's actually a real world course, so. Oh, great, thank you.
Other questions?
Hi, I have a couple questions. How are you?
Good.
A question on the discrete math and geometry, was that a college or honors class?
It was a college class, so it's college class replacing college class.
So you're dropping that and what's replacing it?
Mathematic modeling.
Okay. Then
The
that,
numbers have been really low and we haven't been able to grow that class the way that the math department hoped it would grow. And we're trying to find, again, more offerings for seniors who are not going past Algebra 2 and really want another math class. So this was they're excited about this idea. I think Dave, in the description in the book, gives a good sense of it. But again, hoping that it will meet the needs of kids who are not going on to that last year of higher level math.
okay, thank you. And then the integrated math and physics and then the developing academic skills, hearing us talk about them, it sounds like those would be recommended to the student. Do you agree? Like, it might be
Yes.
a teacher, okay.
Yes,
And are they considered core classes? Pardon my ignorance, I don't have a high schooler yet.
yes.
Okay. So they wouldn't be losing out on another elective to have to take these classes?
No.
Okay. I think
They
that's
would
all I
be
had. Just,
taking- They would be taking those two courses instead of their freshman and sophomore current math classes. So most students go Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. This would basically be doing the same thing, Algebra 1, Geometry, but just tackling it a little bit differently, getting kids ready for that geometry MCAS sophomore year, but then paralleling that with some science standards along with physics standards so that then they could take physics sophomore year. So it's just a little bit of a different approach to it, but they're not missing out on anything and they'll tackle much of the same standards, just in a more integrated curriculum with some support for skills that they may be lacking due to different disruptions or due to, just it could be learning challenges in those content areas. It could be a million different reasons, but if that makes sense.
no, it does. No, I appreciate that. And the only other thing, maybe next year when we get this changes, if we could kind of note which is an elective and which is core, and that would just help, I know me, sometimes I see a class, I'm like, is that an elective or is that a core course? It would just help streamline.
Sure. Sure. And a way that you can do it off of what you have now is you can look at the graduation requirements that are in the front of the book. And so basically, kids could take, it's interesting because kids could take some classes that are a core, but they could take it as an elective. So if you wanted to take, especially now that we have electives for senior English, you need to take 2 of them as a requirement. So they can be both. You're required to take 2 because you need a senior year of English, but then you can take extras as electives, or you could take an AP English class and then take one of these as an elective. So we can find a way to kind of explain that a little bit better on the sheet that we give you next year. But sometimes these courses could be either or. So it just depends on the level that you're taking it at. Not all of them, but some of them. So it gets a little confusing.
Okay.
But we'll try to break it down in a way, that's a good suggestion, Amy, so we'll try to break it down that way a little bit better.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I had one more. Could we talk about, so with integrated math and physics, what I don't see in the course catalog is what that's a prerequisite for. So if we had students that were taking that for junior or for freshman, sophomore, where would they enter back in? Yeah.
So they would go to Algebra 2, and they could go to biology. So they probably would go to Algebra 2 and biology. That's what we've been talking about. There are other entry points that we could see. There's conversations around third year of science and what's included as a lab science, but they would go into a 3rd year of a lab science.
Okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I don't see that in the catalog, and so maybe if that would just be added, so it's not confusing to parents, perhaps.
Yeah, I think the kids who are going to be taking that program, it's going to be laid out for those families particularly, and those students of what their trajectory will be and why they're being selected for this course.
Okay.
It's going to be a pretty particular learning profile who will be in this, so we'll make sure that that's clear. That's a good point, though, so thank you. We will do that.
Thank you.
Could jump in real quick, just so in the spirit of new opportunities and things like that. Nothing officially for any kind of a program or studies or anything, but one thing when I came here I really was passionate about and wanted to get up is a senior internship program. And I'd love to see that grow. And just so this spring, I'm just trying to put together, in Lowell we had a really, really strong program, but it didn't happen overnight. It was many years that we built it up and made a very strong program there. So I'm aware of that. And so I'd like to I'm just trying to pilot something. So this spring, I'm just trying to get about 4 or 5 employers to have our students, 4 or 5 of our seniors, join them for an internship to see how that goes and then kind of see what works, what doesn't work. But in the future, just to put on everybody's radar, I'd love to see a stronger program created that would be more structured than just, a part-time job. So it would be a full-fledged, internship where they'd spend a few hours a week at this employer, where they can give us solid projects and participation and not just filing. And then it would involve like check-ins from the students to do a journal, check-in with the employer. So it can get complex. So I don't want to jump in and you can't just toss that in there, but I do want to get that started. I have a few, there's a physical therapist in town, there's a lawyer, a state rep, and an assisted living home that has some nurses that work there. So I'm just going to get a few students up and running to get that out, but I just want to put that out. I don't know, I feel strong about it. I want to make sure that people know that that's in the works, and I feel like talking about the real world, to have that experience can often even lead to either not only summer jobs, but even full-time jobs. So just to put that on people's radar.
Thank you. Other questions? No, if there are none.
No, fair enough. Thank you, and certainly, Amy and David, please pass along the thanks and appreciation. I know you guys spend lots of hours planning and thinking, and each of the departments, puts a lot of energy into edits and rewrites. So while this presentation was appropriate and concise, it's certainly not representative of the amount of work that you folks have done over the past several months. So, and I think the document has only gotten better each year. I know last year was a significant edit, significant rewrite, and I think it's only getting better each year. So please pass along the committee's appreciation for that work to everyone involved.
Will do, thank you.
We have a motion.
Move that the school committee approve the 2023-2024 Wakefield Memorial High School Program of Studies as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Again, thank you very much, and have a great rest of the evening, and so forth.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Amy, thank you, David.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Much
Good night.
Thank
appreciated.
you.
Next, I'd like to jump back up to kind of the top of superintendent remarks, reports, and recommendations to go up to B, the logo update and next steps. And so I'd like to invite to the table Amy and Elena.
Hi.
How are you? Thank you for your patience. I know it's been a little bit. Would you like to start off and just share your perspective before I share, the proposal from the 29th?
I don't know what your thoughts are. I was kind of hoping to see what the presentation was.
There's no presentation this evening in
Okay.
regard to slides. It's just to discuss what was the proposal that was made on November 29th,
Okay,
which was, we had three logo images that were moved forward. We surveyed students. Students overwhelmingly chose the W concept. So on November 29th, I had proposed to school committee as a path forward to turn this over based on the additional information that was provided by Ohio State to refine the W Warrior concept and let the art department do that, and then move forward with an image that was produced by them. And so it seems like the students were overwhelmingly in favor of that concept, and that was the proposal that I made on the 29th.
so was there another survey that had gone out to get the student info on that?
No,
It was in September.
it was in September.
Okay, no, I'm just confused because you said that they were overwhelmingly in response to having the art department.
They were overwhelmingly in support of the W concept, Amy.
Got you,
The
okay.
W logo.
I
So there were
misunderstood.
3
Okay.
logos that your committee
Right.
brought forward back in June.
Right.
Right.
With the
Right.
W Warrior logo, the W with the warrior.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
And we've been discussing this this isn't new information, but we wanted to make
Right.
sure that as we brought it forward and wanted to really sort of solidify what has been discussed all fall and be able to really move forward a bit,
yeah,
to be able to solidify and bring some resolution to both our appreciation for the policy that was followed, as well as the work that the logo committee did, ending up in June, the work that the survey folks did, and then obviously taking into consideration the requirements of Ohio State. And the superintendent brought recommendations to us back in November, and we just need to, keep the community informed of how this is moving forward. And wanted to make sure that because you had come to a couple of meetings, both of you had, and spoke at public comment, that's when you and I exchanged an email, and I said, let's just bring you in.
Right, yeah.
Let's just have a conversation, invite the members of the committee and whoever wants to be part of this, so we're all able to talk to each other.
right. I'll let you, yeah, do you want to go
Elena
ahead?
Corradino, I am a local committee member for Swansea Road, alumni of Wakefield, and I'm glad you brought up the history, because as we know, the reason that this original Warrior logo was so important to the community, because of the significance of the person that designed it, General Galvin, and the family that it was designed for, the Baird family. So I think that's the reason that this whole process didn't go quite as smoothly as it could have. That being said, I'm not a public speaker, so my intentions are to recap and to question, and I appreciate any discussion at the end. So, as you know, there are many residents and logo committee members that are bothered on how the logo committee process played out. The logo committee members were chosen and accepted in what they expected to be a resolution of the logo and the conflict that it caused. The logo committee members accepted the offer, put in the time and the effort and the input to create 3 potential logos that were to be reviewed by the superintendent, who was to consult and recommend the design to the school committee. The number one logo policy, in this logo policy that was designed, states, whenever action is required concerning the policy, a committee shall be convened. That did not happen. Whenever action was required concerning the policy, we were not convened. We were foiled and smokescreened in twists and turns, not following the policy. The logo committee was not reconvened, so with that, we have many questions, and I'm going to continue with all of them, if you don't mind.
Please do.
We question why the W logo was introduced prior to the removal of the Native American logo that reflected the Wakefield history, when an existing logo had been there. We question why during a pandemic that was a priority placed on the removal of the Native American logo. We question why the superintendent called for the school committee to create a logo policy, a policy of guidelines adopted to create a new logo. We question why a logo committee was formed to create 3 new logos. We question why, after the committee met and created the 3 new logos, why the W logo was brought forward. It was not one of the new logos. It was a logo that was not newly created. It was an existing logo. We question why the chosen logo committee members continued not to be reconvened. We were informed we should have been informed of each and every next step moving forward. We question why the decision was made that the students would decide amongst the 3 logo designs. That wasn't the initial logo policy, when the policy stated the superintendent and the school committee would consult and recommend the 3 logos. We question why, after the school was informed by their own legal counsel to remove the logo prior to Ohio State, why they didn't stop using the W logo. The W logo continued to be used. It was stated that if any of the 3 designs were a copyright infringement, and that the design would be omitted and the other 2 would be chosen. That did not happen in this case. The W logo was moved forward to be redesigned. The logo committee came together in good faith to resolve a community conflict. Our task was to come up with attributes for the new logo. Then our task was to create 3 new designs. Ohio State demanded the stop use of the W logo. After the school was informed that there was in fact an issue, and they continued with the use of the W logo, why didn't the superintendent reconvene the logo committee to make the changes needed on the designs created by the logo committee, the 2 existing? Or why did they not use the next design worked on by the logo committee that was reflected to be the student's next choice? We question, after this time, effort, discussion, approvals of the logo policy, which was designed to implement a procedure, why the policy had not been adhered to, why promises were made and created to use the created logos, why the policy is created, then to be changed without notice. And we question why the art department was now chosen to design 3 new logos, not to follow policy, and then there were 2 existing designs to be chosen from. The logo committee was not reconvened and informed before that decision was moved forward. We question why the superintendent and the school committee didn't continue to follow through with the policy, continue the working relationship with the logo committee. The logo committee had hoped to heal the community's faith in elected school officials in the process that caused almost 3 years of disruption in the school and the community and the students. We question why the school policies are broken and changed without notification or regard to the community. We question why violating a policy and negating the logo committee's input is even allowed. We, the public, believe in policies and the law. In the school, work, and elsewhere, we're expected to follow them. We can't bend and change the rules and the policies as we go along to meet our own agenda. We question the integrity of the logo process. It was a huge disappointment and waste of time for a decision that appears to be made 3 years ago. And here we are, 3 years later, with the logo topic that was unnecessarily drawn out for the public and the students. And multiple townspeople are still disturbed by the discussion of it, and I don't blame them. It's 3 years we've been trying to get this resolved. It was not the logo committee's intention to drag anything out. We did not make the changes dragging it out. And as we know, and we just recently learned, that a new logo is now being created outside the parameters of the logo committee input. The change will be accepted no matter the direction, to a community that never healed. I'm still hoping to heal the community by encouraging and honoring our history. Removal of objects, places, and buildings, iconics that hold history in Wakefield, does not preserve those that came before us. An initial promise in the beginning of all of this, I don't know if you recall, was to honor the families whom created the original Native American logo. The warrior logo was a symbol that had historic meaning to Wakefield and was removed. A recommendation for that is a symbolic statue. I believe that was mentioned in the beginning, to be placed in recognition of the memory, to preserve the honor and the history of the Wakefieldians that gave the country, our country and Wakefield community. What most important outcome would be to honor the families and the generations of Wakefieldians by recognizing them. And, you know, even the Independence Day Committee had a banner for the Baird family. The West Side Social Club had the parade in honor of the Baird family. I built and had a float in the parade in honor of the Baird family and the Baird Trading Post. They have a huge generations here of more history and prominent people. They weren't just average people like myself. And last, this is not kind of unrelated, but we'd like to know where the location of the current Wakefield Memorial High School sign of the side-facing Indian is going to go before it just disappears or is removed. So I respect any comments or decisions, and respectfully will sign off as a Wakefield warrior forever. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. I don't know if you want
Sure,
to
Amy?
answer back to that, or just kind of hear me? Or-
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I agree with all the sentiment that Elena has. We've talked about this quite a bit. And so I have a few questions still too about the whole, what's going on with Ohio State, where did we leave off with that? I know that the letter was sent, the cease and desist, back in, I think, the beginning of October, giving us until mid to late October to have contact back with them to let them know of what our plan was. I've never heard of that plan, what it was moving forward. Their date for us to have a complete cease and desist was the end of this month coming up. So there's still stuff being produced now, which is part of their cease and desist, is to not have any more production of this logo. So I'm wondering why that's still being produced and being pushed out, and kind of where we stand on all of that. To reiterate too about the lack of communication, and I've said this, I don't know how many times I have to keep saying it, but the lack of communication is mind-boggling, and it aggravates me to no end. That we chose to be on this committee because we cared. It doesn't matter to us, and I don't want to speak for Elena, but I think we share the same ideas on this, is that at the end of the day, whatever the logo is what the logo is. We have our favorites of what we both prefer, but at the end of the day, that's not what it's about. It's about, we had something was taken away, a policy was put in place, and that we have followed. That was what our goal, our intention was. We have been left out of conversations. We only received an email about tonight's. I reached out back to Tom back last month about getting on the agenda, where he informed me of this meeting. Other members of the committee weren't privy to that information. The only reason that we got an email about tonight was because one of our other members had reached out saying, you know, this is on the agenda. And then we get an email saying, you know, here's the next meeting. So it's only when we're proactive about things that things are coming back to us, and it's getting old. This whole process is old. We've had it set, you know, the policy is in place that this is what we were gonna do. We talked before about maybe having the community as a whole involved. Having, you know, my idea would be, you know, give the community 2 weeks. Here's 2 weeks, submit your design. doesn't matter who designs it, where it came from, whatever, submit your design. That then comes to our committee. We pick the 3 that we think are the best to move forward. We give them to the superintendent, he gives them to you folks, and then we decide. In my eyes, that would be probably the simplest and easiest way to get this resolved. I don't agree with tasking the art department for doing this. Our teachers are overwhelmed, overworked,
It's not in the policy.
well, yeah, and that is a key point. Yeah, it's not in the policy. But it's taking away their time from educating, and, you know, are they being stipend for this? Did they volunteer for this? We don't have any information about where that idea came from, just that we're just trying to get this done, move it on, which I agree with. It needs to be moved on, but it has to be done in the right way. And I know I keep saying it and saying it. I'm sure you're sick of me saying
I'm sure you
it.
don't want us to show up
but
here, but we're gonna keep showing up until
right.
we feel as though
And I
resolution
said that,
is-
right, and I said that months and months ago, that I'm not going anywhere. Okay, I'm not on any boards anymore, so now I have a lot of time on my
You know,
hands,
some
so I
people
can
might find it
focus on
trivial,
this.
but it's history.
Right.
As pointed out.
Right.
It's
It's
a
history.
historic family, and it was something that was being used. The family was prominent to the Wakefield. I mean, Tom, I'm sure you remember the majorette costumes they made, and
I do.
they had a business here, and they, you know, I don't know if everybody knows the history behind it, or General Galvin, who was their best friend, who designed the logo, you know. So we understand that has to be removed. We're beyond that now, but we were following a policy guideline to come up with a solution, and it doesn't appear that our whole point in time was negated. It was just a waste of our time. It was like smoke screens, you know. We just don't feel as though it went in any direction that we thought it was going to go. So I'm excited to see the new logo, and I'm excited about the new high school. Are you gonna allow alumni to come back? Can I re-enroll? Sounds like a great high school.
Right, I know. Yeah, I think the important, aside, you know, putting aside the history that we all know how important that is, at the end of the day, it comes down to policy and procedure. That's what you guys are here for. We have a policy in place, and it's hard for the community to trust boards when
They don't follow the policy.
you can't, you say you're gonna do one thing, and then you just kind of completely ignore it, you know. The
And it
town
just-
had a vote, and the town said what they wanted, and it was ignored. So we know that the community is invested in this. That's why I feel opening it up to the community. So I think at the end of the day, we either have to change what the policy says, or we have to
Go back to the
start
original
over.
policy and take the two logos that were
Right,
designed.
so I mean, as
You know,
frustrating as
it's
that
very
would be
frustrating.
for everybody, I think that that's what ends up having to happen, so.
So, so first of all, you know, thank you again for coming back, and thank you for this, for the actually exchanging, as opposed to sitting there at a public comment and not being able to have this exchange. So this is important stuff. I think, and obviously anyone can chime in and share thoughts, concerns, frustrations at all. I think one of the things that is perhaps a starting point is a fundamental misunderstanding of the committee, the logo committee's work, its existence, its tenure. I think it's probably fair to say that we think we followed the policy most of the time, if not all of the time. I
I've got
didn't
the
interrupt.
policy right here.
Elena, I didn't interrupt you.
Okay.
I have the policy right here on my computer
You're-
screen too.
I'm sorry.
I didn't interrupt you at all, okay? So I think there's a fundamental sort of disagreement there over the work of the logo committee. I also think it's fair to share with the public that both of you who I consider dear friends are not representatives of the logo committee. You share a minority view of the logo committee. The logo committee hasn't met to decide that you come forward and represent them in the way that you frankly have been. So I think that's you know, there were what, 13 people or something on the logo committee? It's not really fair for the two of you to represent the views of the logo committee. You certainly represent the views that the two of you and Ms. Scott had as members of the logo committee, but it's not fair to say the logo committee feels this way. think it's also the belief of the school committee administration that the local committee's work ended in June when you made a presentation, when most of the 13 or whatever number of you were here and presented the 3 logos. Now, the 3 logos did include the W and the warrior imagery. I know that both of you didn't agree with that being brought forward, but the committee still brought it forward, the logo committee, right? Is that fair to say? Okay. I know you disagree with that, but it was still brought forward. And if I'm remembering correctly, the logo committee had almost a weight that was pretty overwhelmingly supported by members of the local committee. It was then this committee said in June, let's ask the students, which had doing a student survey isn't that far afield from the policy. The policy doesn't specifically say there should be a student survey, but I don't think getting more information, getting student input, was this really exaggerated thing to do. It was probably in order. It was certainly reasonable. And that was done in September. We then get, as you know, obviously a driving force behind the Ohio State letter. We then get this, letter from them telling us to stop the use of it. Elena, you had used the words, copyright and trademark. Those were not concerns brought forward by Ohio State. I think that's important to note. Because those are legal terms that you're using that we were not accused of infringement of trademark. We were not accused of a copyright violation. We were accused of being requested and informed to change the logo because it was a dilution of their image, not because it was a copyright infringement. Effectively, it's a W in the words warrior. They don't own the letter W. They are saying that we're diluting their image by using the same font. The same O font was now the W font. So they want us to stop using the same font and stop using the same script that we had across the W. So it's important to say, when you use the word copyright infringement, that isn't what they told us to stop doing. They said, you cannot use this imagery because it's a dilution of our brand. And I think so, some of these things, I don't want to drag this out anymore, but I think it's important conversation for us to have. I think getting the information from the student survey, we conducted a survey back in September of students in grades 8 through 12. I don't recall the numbers of participants, but it was a fairly strong participation. I think the greatest number of participants were 8th and 9th graders, if I'm remembering some of that data off the top of my head, which I thought was actually pretty cool, because those are the kids that are going to be wearing whatever the logo is much more than the juniors and seniors will, right? So, and then we put forward, again, reverting back to the policy, we didn't believe that the committee needed to be reconvened because we thought the committee's work ended back in June when you presented 3 images, 3 logos for consideration. Those 3 logos were put on student survey. We now had another piece of information to make a decision. Then this Ohio State letter came, so we had to ponder on to make sure we're still, we're in compliance with that. That obviously isn't necessarily something that can be shared moment by moment because there are now attorneys involved, right? And as you know, as you know better than probably most of us, especially your history on boards, that once you get attorneys involved, it isn't necessarily part of the public dialogue anymore. So town council and Ohio State Council are working out the timing, but certainly we can rest assured that we are complying. Attorney Mullen's not going to let us not comply, right? We all have great faith that we're going to do what we're told to do. We're going to comply with Ohio State's design, not to use the font, not to use the script, not to use the color scheme on the pants and all the type of things that they asked of us. We're going to comply with. It's that straightforward. We've said that at a couple meetings here. There's meetings in the fall, and I think the superintendent brought forward a recommendation at November 29th, apparently. I don't remember the date, but I'm going to believe him, at suggesting this is how we move forward. And the fine-tuning or the reworking of the W with the word warrior somehow incorporated into a Wakefield W, a different script, different font, seemed to be the overwhelmingly supported image, both from the logo committee in the fall, last June, as well as the students in September, and it's really that simple. I mean, I don't want to understate the concerns, the frustrations that you're sharing. I do appreciate that. And I think that's what we're here to do tonight, to talk about it and to really appreciate what the superintendent's recommending, to talk about it one more time and to really, put it to bed. I don't believe, you made a great comment, Amy, with regard to, is this an imposition upon the art department? I think they're enthusiastically looking forward to it, because this is another way to get students involved. Kids who are taking these classes are going to be able to have their hand and their creative energy involved in this. I think it's a terrific thing. I don't think it's an imposition. If the teachers requested a stipend, you know me, I'm all in. So that doesn't, I think there's more enthusiasm than we're giving each other, our credit for. The last thing I'm gonna throw out, and then certainly allow others, and Elena, I hear you 110%, and even if about history, and even if we go back to before the 2020 vote on the non-binding resolution, I forget what it was actually called, but something, you know what I mean. Before that time, there was a 12-point or 11-point, resolution that this committee voted on. And a couple of those points were exactly how we're going to memorialize the history, both from General Galvin and the Beard family in the new high school.
Where can I find that, Tom?
So go back to March of 2020,
It's right
February maybe?
No, it's March. It's right before
You have a
the,
copy, Amy.
Yeah.
You have a copy of the resolution.
And I can forward it
You were on the
to
committee then, yeah.
No, she
No, I
wasn't on the
wasn't.
committee.
Oh, you weren't?
But you had requested a copy.
Yeah, I have,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's right.
So,
yeah, yeah.
but, so if we go back to then, I mean, this was, we did not take, and I don't want to oh, God, Amy, let's not rehash 2020.
No.
I love you, let's not do that. But, so if we go back to anyways, my point was the resolution in 2020. I was obviously on the committee and one of the authors among committee members to help come up with how we're going to be mindful of bringing forward quality representations and quality ways to memorialize the Beard family. And we spoke specifically, one of those points in that resolution is when the new high school comes around, which is, when it hasn't left any of our minds, what are we going to have as a display, a static display, a living memorial, something that will actually bring forward the history of all of the logos, going back to certainly the one that General Galvin designed, as well as he wasn't General Galvin then, but the one that John Galvin designed as a student, and the one that was most recently retired. We've had 5 logos across the history of between General Galvin's first one and the last one?
I think many more.
Probably many more. Anyways,
Many more.
so,
But if I could point out as well, Elena, Amy, so under social studies, under the program of studies, the new course, Native American history, is a result of the work that was done that was related to the resolution, right? And so doing this work, I know that there's a lot of emotion with this. I do believe there's agreement in what you're saying, and I agree that we do need to complete this work, right? And I think I'm in agreement with Tom's opening remarks that I do believe that the action of the committee they had kind of taken the charge and brought kind of 3 images forward, and that was the charge of the committee, and that's what the committee had done. And at that point, the committee work was complete, right? And really, it's up to us now to take that information and try to make the next steps. And students overwhelmingly in the survey that was given kind of chose in favor, even in the evening where we were talking about moving one forward, right? There were 3 images, if you remember, right? And there was some kind of tension between the students and the adults. I think these, the students didn't want to, didn't want their voice to be in conflict with the adults. But I think that the students really felt like the W concept was something that they liked, right? And so we took the pressure or the conflict away from them and said, well, why not, take it away from them, and we'll survey people. And Amy, based on your feedback about including eighth graders, we included eighth graders in the survey. Right? We have close to 800 participate, which is really amazing. And it's really pretty consistent grade to grade, the number of students that participated. And 70+% of the students really kind of erred in favor of the W concept, right? And so the W concept as it exists, based on, and I'm pointing to the sweatshirt behind you, so, and so based on the concept as it exists, needs to change. So we'll change it, but I think we'll end up in a similar footprint. And I said this on November 29th. The W concept has been around, and there are, in Tom Bankert's office, if you go in and sit for a minute, there's probably 15 just around his office, right? It's not a new concept. It's just trying to bring it up to date, having it be something that the students feel is attractive, that they can wear on apparel, and we can move forward. I think that that's our goal. And it is to heal, and so it is to heal and to try to do better for students and for the community, right? And so, if we had an opportunity to do some of the work that we had done initially, I'm sure there are things that we would have changed, not in regard to the generation of the logo, but just in regard to kind of the work leading up to the school committee vote to change the logo, right? I think that there's hindsight is 20/20, right? And we learn a lot, and we learned a lot in the process of doing that, right? And we're not trying to repeat sins of the past, but we're trying to give students a logo that they feel good about wearing on logo and on apparel, and we can move forward, right? And there are a number of kind of touch points that you will see in regard to curriculum, you will see in regard to the work that student leaders are doing with Indigenous peoples, in regard to our town history. So we've made a lot of progress in a lot of areas in a very short amount of time because of this work that we've taken on. And so I hope that you can see that and honor that for the improvement and the intent behind the improvement. So that, I think, is my perspective.
Can I-
appreciate your feedback. I do want to point out, Tom, I wasn't stating that there was a copyright. My quote here was that your own legal counsel told you to stop using it. And it was stated by the superintendent that if there were any of the three designs were a copyright design, the one that may be or would be omitted and the other two would be chosen. And that did not happen. That's the only reason I used the copyright word. And the only reason that it's just Amy and I is other members couldn't make it. I don't know about the students.
I don't know if the students even know that this is happening. I don't know who knows that this is
Everyone on the
happening.
committee was notified.
Yesterday?
On the logo committee.
Yes,
Was
I-
notified
I didn't
yesterday.
hear about it. I
Correct.
heard about it through hearsay, and then I got an email because that, a member.
You received my email?
Yeah, but I got it yesterday at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
You know, and that's,
It's just the November 29th update was part of a public meeting. There wasn't anything dramatic there, not any big news. I know Amy was gonna come in December to have a conversation about this. Tom had said, come and we can have more of an open discourse, so that brings us here this evening.
But
which
as
is
far
why
as
it's
the
on the
logo
agenda.
committee and the logo design itself, as far as we were concerned, that the logo committee isn't done until the logo's completed, and we should have been included in the process right up to the end.
So.
Well, maybe that's an interpretation that we need to fine tune in the policy. Our
Well, I
interpretation
believe
was the
that-
local committee's work was done when you presented 3 designs.
At one of the meetings, and there were many that the superintendent couldn't make, we were told that they would be brought forward. If any of them needed to be tweaked by the students, they would be. And they would be back in touch. I believe that was in February of a year ago. And then it was dropped for the longest time. We didn't get any,
Yeah, nothing.
nothing.
But I want to jump into, and I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect from where I stand from what is, like, what you were just saying, Doug, about, we want the kids to have a logo and all this stuff. I'm 100% on board with that.
All 100%
That's
before.
right. My issue is that, we were tasked at this. I had said from the beginning, I believe that this might, and I, at the time, used copyright because I don't know legal words. This might be a copyright issue. It was told it would be looked into. It was never looked into until we took it upon ourselves to do it. We're not here representing the committee. We're here as members of the committee, who are the ones that have been following this the whole time. So in no way have we ever said that we're representing the committee, because that's not our goal. We were tasked to do something. We were never told our job was done. Again, going back, my whole thing about this is the principle behind the policy. If this is not the policy we're going to follow, I'm simply asking that we change the policy. If we're going to say, you know what, we're putting this up to the art department, fine. It is what it is. That's what it is. But we have to have a policy that says that. That's where I'm standing. It doesn't matter. Yes, I want the old logo. I want the side-facing Indian. That's not an option, and that's not where I'm coming from. I'm coming from that this was the policy that we were tasked with, and the options on there are not what happened. There's something that was taken off the table. We weren't tasked again to either find another option or to choose from the two that were remaining. So if we're gonna task the art department, then just write it out. Just say, this is our new policy. We're amending this one. Our new policy states that student input is not on there, community input is not on there. We're gonna go right to the art department, or whatever it's gonna be.
Can I jump in here, if I may? Only because I think I have a unique perspective. So, of everybody on this committee, nobody has my perspective. I'm the
Yeah.
only one here who, in the early stages of the whole logo debate, said I wasn't crazy about the process. We can absolutely change the policy. Every policy can get tweaked.
Right.
I don't think it was intentional, but maybe things aren't specifically written down as clearly as they should have been. We could tweak policies the rest of our lives.
Right.
I've known Dick Baird, I worked with Dick Baird, so I know Dick Baird for years. Amy knows this. So I appreciate what Dick Baird did. Doug and I went to see Dick Baird back when the whole thing was really starting to heat up. So, while I wasn't crazy about the process that took place to do it, at the end of the day, I was outvoted, and that's fine. You're not always going to get your way, and you move forward, and that's just where we are. And I think, tweaking the policy, absolutely. Are we going to now go back and reinvent it? No, realistically, we're not going to.
Right.
It's not
Yeah.
going to happen. Who's kidding who here at the end of the day? And I always think of, we talk about moving forward, and I always like moving forward versus moving on. Moving forward doesn't mean you ever forget. I'll never forget Dick Baird. You won't never forget. You'll never forget him. And there are many ways beyond a logo that we will always remember Dick Baird. He wasn't a logo to me when I worked with him for 4 or 5 years. He was just a kind, gentle, smart, just a good human being. And that, to me, is Dick Baird's legacy at the end of the day. It's not a logo. And we just have to make sure that as we move forward, we find ways to honor Dick Baird that go well beyond the fact that he designed a logo. That is the most important thing, in my opinion. That's it.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, in terms of where you thought the deviation from the policy occurred.
Sure. Can I just, thanks. So, thank you. So it says, one of the parts is saying that whenever action is required, that the committee would be convened. So in my
Okay.
in my eye, and maybe, it's open for interpretation, that when, I guess, I don't know who was notified, if it was the school itself was notified by Ohio State, that kind of took that logo off the table. So at that point, that seems like an action is required. That one is no longer part of the group, that's the one that all the students chose, but now we can't use it because they're telling us we can't. So in how I'm interpreting this is an action is required now. We were told that it would come down to the other two. and then that would be moved forward. But none of that had happened. So, again, for me, it comes down to the policy. How is it interpreted? Who, can you read it and say, and obviously, everything, you learn and you grow and you move on, and you do better the next time. But, there's different things on here. We have, let me see, meetings with local organizations, to my knowledge, part of our committee, we didn't do that. A survey went out after our request in September. Community forums, not about the logo itself. I think going forward, that's an option of something that can happen. Let me see. And again, nowhere on here does it say anywhere that our work is done after we hand over 3 logos. And again, we don't have a logo pick, so in my eyes, the committee's work is not done because there's nothing.
I think if you read through 4 and 5, I think 4 is the selection of 3 options. 5, they get handed to the superintendent, and then the superintendent reviews for final sort of, an affirmative from the school committee. But once it sort of sits within the superintendent's space, like the committee, he doesn't have to look at, or the superintendent doesn't need to look at 20 options or 12 options, or
Right.
he gets to look at the 3 that the committee came up with, which
Right.
he was handed. And then from there, he can review and then make a submission to us. In that review, you took on the added, there actually is, surveys and questionnaires are called out in something that the committee could do. And so when it came, and we did see, to Tom's point, overwhelming support from the student members of the committee for
Right.
this. And we had just asked at the time, had they even polled their friends? Did the committee do anything to ask the larger student body? And so it felt like another piece of data. And so it was kind of nice to hear that it aligned. And I thought it just sort of reinforced what the work that the committee had done. So it seemed like it was completely aligned. And then if it weren't for sort of the letter from Ohio State, which unfortunately seems to have been driven from members of this community, that's unfortunate because then we had to go back to the drawing board, so to speak. But now you already felt charged by the student body. Sort of, this is what the kids want. This is what they've asked for. It's their logo.
Right.
It's not the adults' logo. It's not everybody in the community's logo. It's the kids' logo. This is what they asked for. I think we put ourselves in a position where now we're defending their choice. And what can we do to best represent that choice? But go to the art department and say, can you help us with this? Can you help us give the kids what they want?
Right. Oh, and I totally agree with you. All I'm saying is, just put it in the policy.
That's what I see in the policy.
But
Well,
not
to
about
be-
the art
To
department.
be fair.
That falls under
That-
point 5, where it empowers the superintendent. From there, it's his ball. You handed him 3 choices.
Your work is done at the end of 4. The committee handed up to 3 logos to the superintendent. The superintendent presented those 3 logos to the school committee. The school committee then has the ability to decide what's next.
To be fair, I believe that a couple of the meetings the superintendent wasn't in that were driven, the statement was made that they were gonna take the 3 logos. They were going to be redesigned, and I thought we were going to reconvene. That
That's
was my
the impression
understanding.
I was
That's the
under.
It was never
impression
put in
a
the
lot of us-
policy, obviously.
A lot of
What's
us
that?
had.
It was never put in the policy, obviously, to
Right.
reconvene.
Yeah.
So,
But
once
I
again,
think it
it's
was
not
just
in
a
here.
statement
We
made,
were
and I,
told,
he
yeah.
wasn't part of the meeting either, so
Yeah, yeah.
that's to be
Right.
fair,
Yeah.
you know.
It's unfortunate it's not in here, but it isn't.
Right.
And a point of clarity, and maybe we, I think we've shared around the Ohio State letter, so it's not a secret by any stretch. I think a point of clarity, though, is that they didn't ask us to take that option off the table. They said, do not use the font and the script, because they don't own the letter W, right? They don't, and I'm not trying to be a wise guy, but
Yeah.
they don't own the letter W.
Right.
So they can't tell us not to use the W in our logo. They told us to not use the font and have it so obvious that it looks like the same font and the same script by using the same font in our W that they have in their O. That's what they asked us to do.
Right.
Do not use the font.
Right. I
So
think,
it isn't really taking the logo concept of a W with the word glory across it, which isn't really breaking new ground, right? It's just saying, don't use the font and don't use our Ohio State script. That's a dilution of their brand.
Right, and don't produce new merchandise.
Correct.
Right, and anything that's left over needs to be sent to them for their disposal.
Well, we haven't agreed to that. Just because they
Okay.
asked us to do, and you know this in
Okay.
negotiating,
Yeah.
you've probably negotiated more stuff on behalf of the town of Wakefield than all of us combined. Just because someone asked for it doesn't mean
Right.
they're gonna get it.
Right,
So that's what legal counsel's doing. They're working out the fine details.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State has asked us to do certain things. We've committed publicly to doing certain things.
Right.
You've said it at this table, I've said it, the superintendent said, we will discontinue the use of that logo moving forward.
right.
We're not gonna take our stuff and throw it out, though.
Mm-hmm.
We're not. We're gonna, and that, even going back to one of the points of the 11 or 12-point resolution says that.
Right.
We're not gonna waste taxpayer money. We're not gonna start tearing down logos around this town, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the points. When things come up for renovation and new, then we will start introducing. We're not gonna burn uniforms because they've got the Native American imagery on it. We're not doing that. So we're not doing it again. We're not wasting taxpayer dollars to reinvent these wheels here by continuing to turn out a new logo or every couple of months. So we're really trying to be attentive to the resolution that's still in play, going back to 2020. That's really the guiding work, to Doug's point on the course that we're introducing. One of the points of the resolution was to have the high school social studies team create some curriculum around indigenous peoples and Native American history and how Wakefield relates to that. And that's what they presented tonight as an idea.
I think-
So we're really trying to be faithful to the resolution and this work. Do we probably
I appreciate that.
fall
I-
down from time to time? Yeah, probably. I mean,
I think the biggest misconception was, I think a lot of us thought that there was gonna be an image, especially during the logo committee process. The majority of, there was a lot of input, there was a lot of designs. And they were all, none of them, except for that W, was a W. They were all, there was an image.
but those are the three
Like
that
a
the committee
symbol.
brought forward.
No,
I didn't
no,
sit in
I-
any
no,
of
I
those
understand
meetings.
that, but I think that-
Purposely, I didn't want anything to do with it.
I think the,
committee
when you
brought
read
those
the
three images
policy,
forward.
it was, the mindset was thought that there was going to be some sort of symbol or image, not just a W, but, I mean.
But it wasn't.
No, I understand that. I'm not disputing.
Right.
And whatever I said, whatever the design is, we're moving forward and we want the students to have a logo. But I think that's part of the miscommunication or the misunderstanding in the process and how we were gonna be involved.
So I'm just wondering if maybe an amendment can be added to this, to part 4, that says, once the 3 logos, or whatever it is, are handed over to the superintendent, the work of the committee is complete. And then perhaps, when it comes down to, that the superintendent can make recommendations, whatever, that maybe there's an item in there that says, may include work from the art department, work from the community, whatever else that is. So I'm just looking for an amendment to this that states what we're doing going forward, so that this,
Doesn't become
it
an
lines
issue.
up,
Doesn't
it's not an
happen
issue going forward.
going forward.
That we
And
have,
Fair to say you would amend point 1 as well?
point 1, let's see. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, whenever action is, yeah. Just,
Maybe
yeah,
we need
so
to
it's
better
special.
define what action is or.
Exactly, so that when you read it, you know exactly, this is what this is saying. Here's the 3 logos we presented. Once you present them, your work is done. If another, if it comes up again, a new committee will be put together by school committee or whomever, and then you'll follow the thing again. So,
I think one of the things that this policy was purposely created to do was to look beyond the current need, beyond the high school need,
Right.
and to be able to create something that would have some legs, if this were to happen again, or the Galvin Middle School wanted to add a logo or whatever. We just created something around how this works
right,
moving forward. So, here we are a year and a half later, right? From September 2021 to January 23, year and a half later. So it's probably appropriate that we look at that. Okay, what didn't work well? What do we need to clarify? What do
Right.
we need to make improvements on? And I think, raising some clarity around point number 1 is probably more than fair. Raising concern on when the committee's work, specifically saying when the logo committee's work ends, under point number 4, is probably fair too. because it's, while it is implied, it's certainly not stated, so I get that. You know, the art department, I think, you know, Amy, from your years in the graphics business, you know, no matter what the logo is, it's gonna be given to an artist
Right.
to tighten it up, to throw it into, you know, Adobe Illustrator or something to make it art worthy and reproductive worthy, right? So I think that's gonna happen, no matter, I think that needs to be
Regardless, right.
stated. It's more refining imagery than starting over and creating all new concepts again. An artist is gonna have his or her hand on the artwork before it goes to sweatshirts
Production,
and
right.
t-shirts and all that, right? I think
Exactly.
that's- I don't think it needs to be added. It's probably obvious that there's gonna be a graphic element by a professional. that-
And
that
maybe
does
that's
that.
something that does get added, you know, you know, the graphic that's chosen will, you know, will be tweaked to be able to be produced. Whatever wording is, you know, something like that.
Sure.
I just think it needs to be tightened up.
Good points.
Yep.
Kevin?
Just really briefly, because I don't want to belabor any of the points that have already been made really eloquently
We
by
have a new high
everybody.
school to construct.
I told you I have nothing else going on.
Right.
I wanna get you on the high school committee, I don't want to.
But
Anyway,
I do concur with all of my committee mates here that, you know, when I was reading through this, to me it seems like it's been followed. You know, I was chair of the committee that had approved this policy. Agree that, you know, as always, once you actually go through something, you realize where there are some tweaks. So I had a hard time kind of understanding why it was seen that others maybe didn't interpret this as being followed, and I think you've clarified, you know, some of that. But something that I think's been said tonight, it's been in some emails, and I'm not trying to tell anyone how they should feel, but please know, I think, how appreciative we are all of the committee's work, and that it wasn't in vain, and I think that there wasn't a preconceived outcome. Maybe others had one. I mean, you know, we were presented with three images from the committee. Again, I think congruent with this policy. So please don't feel like your efforts were in vain, because I think it played an important part of that. And maybe over time, you can feel that way or not. But I want you to know that, you know, I think for many of us, we're appreciative of all 13 and others who came together to work on this, who forwarded the school department 3 different images of which we are choosing from. And just know the appreciation, and that I don't think it was meant to make anyone feel as if your work, your time wasn't valued.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
You're here. You're here.
Thank you for all your
Any
time.
other comments or thoughts?
I was just going to, if I could, I want to make a motion sort of in support of sort of the superintendent's recommendation of November of last year, and sort of just to put into language sort of an emphatic, just that we're gonna discontinue the use of the Ohio State fonted sort of W and put it in the hands of our creative sort of departments.
Okay.
So if that's okay,
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion
Okay.
to move that the school committee endorse the superintendent's recommendation of November 29th, 2022, that the Wakefield Memorial High School Art Department redesign the interim logo, discontinuing the artistic use of font and script similar to that of Ohio State University's logo, yet include a newly designed W and the word Warriors in order to maintain the creative efforts, work, and recommendations of the high school logo committee of June 2022 and the student survey data of September 2022.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Or any discussion, rather? Seeing none? All in favor? Whoop.
sorry.
Amy Lehman, no. I was looking at you, but you weren't.
I know. Because I don't know if this is, so are we going to look at the policy then too, to sort of tweak it a little bit? Like we discussed? I know we're voting on the logo, which falls back in the policy, but are we going to look at the policy to kind of,
Yes.
okay. And then that will be put on the table and then we'll revisit that?
Well, what would typically happen, right, is if the school committee would need to effectively assign this task to the policy subcommittee, and the subcommittee would then do its thing at its next meeting or thereabouts, and bring back recommendations to make adjustments to the policy moving forward.
Yeah.
Is that
'Cause it,
what you think, yeah? So I think the answer to
It
your
just-
question is yes, but these two things live in different, universes. We're gonna look at the policy to make appropriate adjustments to bring clarity to issues, but Stephen's motion is about how we're gonna move forward with the high school logo over the next couple of months, I guess.
so, okay, so then going back, so thank you for that clarification. But going back to the logo, so when the art department comes back with their one image, is Doug gonna present that, Dr. Lyons, present that to the school committee to vote on? Or once it comes back, it's a done deal? Like, what are the next steps, I guess?
I think we would adopt.
What are we
the
actually
image.
voting on? Giving Doug all authority to approve what the art department, or is it coming back again for another vote?
So my answer would be, and everyone can chime in, but my 2 cents would be, and following the policy, the superintendent makes a recommendation, and in this case would be a single recommendation, because that's what we're saying to move forward on. Now, if we happen to not to like it, and they give us an image that has green and yellow in it, and we're not the North Reading Hornets, well, we may say, no, we don't want green and yellow. So, I mean, I think we may be able to kick it back. I think we may be able to kick it back and say that it isn't something I like, but the policy does speak to the school committee really having the final say. Is that other folks' interpretation of item 5 as well?
So you're really saying yes to Amy, that we will be the ultimate.
Correct. Just as item 5.
Yep,
So they're redesigning just one design for you to look at?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Per the motion, yes, just the
Per
one.
the,
Okay, thank you.
okay. Any other questions or clarities around the subcommittees? Now, you guys talked about this last week, right? Was
Yeah.
this something that was on your plate
Yeah.
last week? Okay. Very good. Okay, motion made and seconded. Nope, go ahead.
We can just vote on this and then I'll say it.
Okay, fair enough. Motion made, seconded, and discussed. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Ingles?
I suppose now I would just say, if it pleases sort of the fuller committee, that the policy subcommittee will sort of reopen the policy on logos for potential amendment.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But those can be done independently, these two things.
Yeah, they're not linked.
Yep.
We're not revising the policy to go back in time and.
Nope. Having gone through this once, we would just like to fine tune some things
like to, right.
at the suggestion of some of the members of the logo committee.
Cool.
Good.
Makes sense.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Here,
Good to see you.
like Kevin said, we're all, you guys are awesome to be part of this. You know what we should probably do big picture, and I have no authority to say this other than one of 7. But maybe we should have a community review, well, no, maybe we should have a community review of the 11 or 12 point resolution. It's now 2 years, almost 3 years later. How are we doing on that?
Right.
And maybe now, if the high school project, obviously, we're not gonna put the cart before the horse. We go to town meeting vote, high school becomes a thing, then let's have a committee, as the resolution says, a community-based committee on what we're gonna have to make a memorial in the new high school for the Beard family and for, General Galvin. So we're not losing focus on where we started.
Good.
Thank
At
you.
least that's our
Thank you.
goal.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Appreciate it.
So see you at town meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
If I don't have class.
We'll send your friends.
Do a makeup.
Saturday morning, 9 AM.
Thank you again very much.
Thanks, have a great night.
Have a good night, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving on to 9C, WMHS and MSBA calendar reminders. Again, on January 21st, there's going to be a community forum at the high school. This will be similar to community forums that we've had in the past, where we will do tours of the high school, and this is on a Saturday morning. This is January 21st, and it's on a Saturday morning, just to change the times. We've done it predominantly in the evening, and I think it's been hard for some families to get here, so we wanted to try to schedule something on Saturday morning, to try to open it up at a different time, different day, to try to make tours of the high school accessible so that people understand what they're voting on and give the community an opportunity to hear more about the construction as well as our new funding agreement that we're working on currently. I also want to give a shout out to the Boys and Girls Club, which during the town meeting on January 28th, they will be providing childcare here at the high school on site. And I need to thank Anthony Guadia for reaching out and being willing. Special thanks again to the Boys and Girls Club for providing childcare during the town meeting for the special vote on the 28th, which is the week after the community forum. We are also adding to the calendar a celebration, a recognition night, which is a doubleheader basketball game, similar to what they do in colleges and universities, where when fall teams and fall sports are very successful, they will have a celebration at a basketball game. So on January 20th, that is a recognition night to celebrate the fall athletes, to celebrate the football team winning the Super Bowl, the cross-country team winning another state title, and also cheer will be there, band will be there, being recognized for their all their accomplishments in the fall as well. So it's going to be a great night. There'll be something going out to the entire community, and the entire school committee is invited.
Get your tickets early for
Get
that
your
one.
tickets early. Get your tickets early. It's gonna be crowded. We're also closing out the second quarter. Academically, you heard this earlier, it closes out on the 20th. So just a very quick budget update and comment. Christine and I are working on the budget timeline, and we are making our way around to meet with principals, and we will be meeting with all faculty and staff face-to-face ahead of sending out a survey to hear about what their budget priorities are. We're also pleased to be able to report to the school committee and the community that we are working on hiring a new adjustment counselor at Wakefield Memorial High School, and that position is grant funded, so it has a net neutral effect on the budget. It is grant funded through the Stop the Violence grant, and the grant will be facilitated by our Board of Health. Special thanks to Anthony Choi and Catherine Dingra for taking the lead and securing this grant. This is a partner grant where we are getting an adjustment counselor, and so will Stoneham and Melrose. So it's a three-partner grant, but it's facilitated by our Board of Health. Special thanks to them.
So are we sharing one person, three?
No.
Three separate,
Three
just to
separate,
make sure.
three
Yeah.
separate, right? And so it's $1 million grant.
Awesome.
It's $100,000 a year for each district for 3 years, Michael.
Awesome, thank you.
And so we're very, very pleased to have that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't include the Lehman report. Just a quick update on our FTEs. We currently have 27 positions posted, and only 9 of the 27 are full-time positions. And it's a combination between kind of hard-to-fill school psychs, as well as a few ISP positions. But that's kind of a very quick update. We will keep you abreast of all of our FTEs in terms of, and how we're tracking positions as we move into the budget season. And that is it from me. And thank you very much for your questions. No questions. Thank you.
I just wanted to bring you back real quick to the MSBA discussion, and the calendar reminder is that, for one, childcare provided for the town meeting, the kids can't be too small, they have to be potty trained. So that's one caveat. But by all means, put the kid on your lap and have them enjoy the civic process. And then sort of hand in hand with that, with this being on a Saturday, and doing school tours, I know one thing that's been a barrier to
You're
some
referring to
people.
the 21st.
The
community
21st,
forum.
sorry. Yes, the community forum on the Saturday. Can families bring their kids?
Sure.
Okay, because I think that that's been a barrier to some previously where it was at night.
Sure.
But if this is in a place where,
Yes.
sort of, yeah. So
Bring
my
someone
kid,
else's kids,
my
too.
kid would love to go through the high school he'll never attend.
Cool.
That'd be great.
Great to have
Yeah,
him.
before it goes down, he thinks the idea of dark hallways and a library like in the basement kind of thing is really appealing. He's gonna be sad.
Okay.
But I assure him more
You might be
windows and
able to have a
natural
lot of
light.
mementos of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. There'll be plenty.
Yeah, he's excited about the new labs and the media space looks
Ah,
amazing.
My goodness.
So,
Yes.
okay, great,
Good.
thank you.
Any other questions? No? That's it
Okay.
for me. Thank you for your patience.
Item 10, budget items.
Okay.
Ms. Bufagna.
This is what we've been waiting
We're
for all
gonna
night.
close it out at 2 hours and 30 minutes. So, as Doug said, fiscal '24 budget is really in full swing. We sent out packets to principals mid-December that had 2 years of actual data and projections for this year and next year for enrollment and non-salary lines, and enrollment for student data, and then current staffing information for schools. So we're gonna be starting that next week. But for fiscal '23, you have the financial reports through December 31st. We have about 8.92% remaining, pretty healthy. We have our encumbrances. Grants, we're still spending down. We still are looking to use our ESSER 3-month allocation for this year and next year. Metco is still being spent down as well for our state grant. And the last page is the revolving accounts. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for the financial reports for
What do you know? No questions.
Oh.
for Christine?
Who'd have thought of 10:10?
Okay, we have a motion for our December payrolls.
Move that the school committee approve payroll warrants number 24 and number 26 as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you. And no gifts tonight.
No gifts tonight. It is a giftless night.
Other times.
Item number 11, subcommittee reports. Finance and Facilities,
Yeah.
Mr. Boudreau.
Apparently, we were supposed to have a meeting last Thursday, and we forgot about it, or it was never scheduled. So the Finance and Facilities meeting will be on the 19th, so a week from this coming Thursday. So hopefully, Amy and Tom, that will work okay for you, probably 8 in the morning, like we usually do. The main agenda item will be to,
Capital.
well, first is going to be to establish our specific goals for the subcommittee. So that's when we'll kind of nail down those, some concrete type goals. But of course, the capital is part of that as well. So look forward to that conversation.
Very good. Labor, probably the thing to note, we're going to begin on Thursday of this week, negotiations with teacher representatives in the Unit A for the contract, new collective bargaining agreement. We've got dates that the union leaders and ourselves have shared out. Hopefully, dates that have shared out for the next couple of months, but we certainly have some agreements over the next a couple of months. So looking forward to good conversations, productive conversations about addressing teaching and learning needs of the teaching staff, and respecting and appreciating their work for our next collective bargaining agreement. So that begins on Thursday. Student Services, Ms. Lehman.
Hello, we haven't met. The holidays came and went. But the good news is the Student Services survey went out today to teachers and families. So anyone who gets a survey, if you can complete that, that would be great. And then we will have our goal for our next meeting. It's going to be around, probably based on the survey data, and we will be meeting the next couple of weeks to go over the survey data. That's all I have, but I was encouraged to see in the program of studies that the high school already has a course, the Developing Skills course, which sounded like it was executive functioning based, so that is exciting. It's like they knew what we were planning. Look at that, we already met our goal. Done.
Sweet.
All right, thank you very much.
Amy, how long does the survey, how long is it open?
You know, I noticed there was no end date on that, so I had that same question. I don't know if Kara's still,
Probably be a little over a week.
Week or so?
yeah,
Okay.
well, I'll find out and get back to you. I would say a week or two at least.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Policy. Stephen?
Yep. So the policy subcommittee met last Thursday. We had Mr. Ahmed Achman, the youth council member and school committee liaison, meet with us again to talk further about the idea of youth council student action committee. Is that
The youth action team.
youth action team joining us at the table to sort of discuss through meetings. So what we started to talk about is the fact that this form sort of already existed previously, and so we had asked if Ahmed could maybe meet with Ms. McLeod, Mr. Afcante. Doug said he could perhaps set that up, and then also meet with the existing sort of student leadership team and sort of find where they have similarities, and because I don't want them to create another process in parallel with something that already exists. So let's figure out why that got off the rails, or is it off the rails, or what does that start to look like? But talk about that with the students that are already sort of in that space. So hopefully further to report on that. Past that, we were talking about the MASC still holds they hold our policy book. They've been updating it, so we talked about what the process would be to sort of look at what their updates would be, any changes that we need to make, and how we would relay those out to the greater committee for voting on as we need to amend. And then we sort of ended in discussions about sort of some ready work. I think we had mentioned before, from a communication standpoint and a sort of a cultural piece, is educating the school committee on sort of some of the challenges with equity, education, and diversity within our district. It's topics that come up in sort of conversations around the district often. What can we do to sort of better educate ourselves in that space? We had talked about a PD almost for school committees, and Doug reported back after we asked him to go talk to his colleagues, effectively saying, no, nobody's doing that. So then we said, could we turn it around a little bit, and could we have the educators that are sort of educating in this space come into us and talk to us a little bit about their challenges? Submit, hopefully something for a future agenda, just sort of another way to take a bite at the apple. So good discussions going on, and then closing on discussing about the Ohio State letter and how we essentially would be in support of sort of the motions that, or the actions that Doug had already described. And we closed it out with that. Our next meeting will be January 17th at 5. And Ahmed will hopefully be coming back with some updates. We'll talk to Attorney Spatafor about some of our policy work in MASC, and then goals, of course, goals.
Great.
Yep.
Very good. Liaison reports. Any liaison representatives have anything to share tonight?
So CPAC, I'm CPAC liaison.
Sure.
They have a meeting coming up this Thursday at 7 p.m. It'll be on Zoom on basic rights, specifically on evaluation and eligibility. So they always sort of host good events and good informationals. So if you have anything, any questions in that space, and I want to go back to, often people don't think that like their questions are important enough, or they don't think they rise to this level. It's the faster people get that, like, we all have the same questions, and it's no matter how high or low, it's always the same question. And just to be in a room where people are talking and can inform one another, I would just encourage people that have those questions to attend and talk to people that have shared experiences.
If I could add, CPAC is also working with Rosie Galvin and looking at a list of accessibility challenges with the current high school as it exists. And so the reason that they're looking to get that information in an accessible format, not to misuse the word accessible, to get it in a format that is, that can be kind of shared, is because they are really thinking a lot about how best to share information about the current facility and also how they can best support the educational plan and the work and the upcoming vote. So that more information there as well.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Item 12, future dates and agenda items. There are three dates noted. Our next school committee meeting, 2 weeks from this evening, Tuesday, January 24. Town meeting following that on Saturday, January 28 at 9 a.m. in the high school field house. And then the 2 February dates, because it's February school vacation week there, this is consistent with the calendar we approved back in August, but it is not the 2nd and 4th. It's February 7 and February 28 because of the February school vacation week that's in the middle there. So it's a little different for the month of February. Any members that have a future agenda item to suggest at this time or request? Okay, great, moving
Oh,
on.
hold on.
School. Oh, Amy, yes, sorry. My bad.
So, I talked to Doug separately about this, or an email, the 7th grade extended math and what that's gonna look like. So if we could get that on the February agenda.
Yep, not a problem.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, item 13, school committee comments going around the table. Looking for volunteers who may have something to share. Yes,
I
Eileen?
just wanted to say one thing.
Please.
You mentioned the library, and it made me think, just a few weeks ago, there was a proposal there between 2 high school teachers, and it was a very happy thing. My niece was actually involved in it. They had their students involved, and it was really sweet, and congratulations to Meg and Thomas.
Meg Delory?
Yeah,
Oh.
congrats. I actually
It was
watched the
amazing.
video. It was
Oh.
beautiful.
It was
so
amazing, yeah.
That's awesome.
happy
Yeah.
memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really cool.
Yes. That was all I wanted to share.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That's a nice, that's a nice thing to wind the meeting down with.
Yes.
Any other comments? I will just make very briefly one, as a proud parent of a member of the class of 23. The class of 2023 is having a fundraiser tomorrow night at Fuddruckers, raising money for their senior week activities and such. So Fuddruckers in Reading, in the inside where Jordan's Furniture is, between 3 and 6 p.m. And 20% of the proceeds from the evening will be donated to the class of 23.
Sorry,
So-
Tom, the date is, I'm sick.
It's tomorrow,
Tomorrow, okay. well, that's easy.
January 11, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. So go get some of the best cheeseburgers in Reading. Okay, thanks. Seeing no other comments from the committee, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yeah,
Well, I suppose that's it.
that was already adjourned.
Oh, sorry.
Move
Got ahead
that
of
the school
myself.
committee adjourn its meeting of Tuesday, January 10, 2023.
Second.
Second, all right. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
All right. I was on.
I did that 2 hour. Yeah.